Mysteries fascinate many of us. Each year investigators cover many puzzling events, artifacts and discoveries that leave them scratching their heads as to what could be the cause. Many mysteries have been explained as the years have passed, and even more have been met with a general consensus as to their cause to be otherwise considered entirely solved. Yet there are several strange mysteries that have yet to be solved in the modern day, and it's these impossible to explain enigmas that have left us wanting answers. So today we'll be taking a look at 25 unsolved mysteries. The mystery of King Tutankhamen. The world of archaeology has allowed us to see a glimpse of what life would have been like for our ancestors. One of these is King Tutankhamen. There's been many theories put forward about what he looked like, but new research suggests that the king wasn't disabled as previously thought. King Tutankhamen ruled over Egypt as pharaoh for 10 years, and the only reason this came to an end is because he passed away at the young age of 19, with Egyptologists estimating this would have been around 1324 BC. Back in 1922, during a privately funded excavation by Lord Carnarvon, Howard Carter discovered the completely intact tomb of the ancient Egyptian pharaoh Tutankhamen. The artifacts retrieved along with the well-preserved body of the pharaoh helped to provide a clear image during the reign of Tutankhamen, and also life for ancient Egypt. The tomb was one of the most well-preserved and unaffected tombs, holding a variety of artifacts and clues as to many other Egyptian mysteries that Egyptologists were still trying to answer. One of the most interesting discoveries was the stone sarcophagus containing 3 coffins. The final one was made of gold. When the archaeologists opened the lid, King Tut's mummy was revealed. Researchers have put forward the theory that King Tut passed away from a gangrene infection, suggesting that it likely came from a broken leg. However, fast forward to 2006, and a scan showed researchers that there was damage to King Tut's skull, and another 2010 study showed scientists that King Tut had malaria and was disabled, even coming forward and saying that he would have needed a cane to walk. A 2018 study, however, has challenged these beliefs, with scientists saying that King Tut was a warrior. Specialized photography uncovered signs of battle scars on the 18-year-old pharaoh's 3,000-year-old leather war armor. A University of Northampton researcher worked on a documentary, and they discovered that King Tut's armor was buried inside his tomb, further saying that it contradicted past theories of King Tut's weak image. Researcher Lucy Skinner said the following: "It was possible to see abrasions along the edges of the leather scales, meaning that the armor had seen considerable use, that suggests that King Tut had worn it, and that perhaps he had even seen battle." End quote. As of right now, the studies and debates are still ongoing, with some believing that King Tut was not an ill king, but rather someone who was a leader in the battlefield. Dinosaurs interest many of us, and every time one of these ancient creatures is unearthed, it gives us a small peek into what life would have been like millions of years ago. One of the most interesting discoveries that caused much discussion is that of Mary Schweitzer's T-Rex. For years researchers have known about the giant theropod Tyrannosaurus rex, but Mary's discovery surprised even the most knowledgeable researchers, and is still heavily debated amongst paleontologists to this day. Mary Schweitzer discovered astonishing evidence that may change the world's view of dinosaurs. While studying a slice of Tyrannosaurus rex bone through a microscope, she spotted something that looked like red blood cells. This seemed impossible because organic remains could not possibly survive the fossilization process. Subsequent tests, however, indicated that the structures were red blood cells, and they were from a 67 million-year-old Tyrannosaurus rex. In the years that followed, Mary and her team discovered other soft tissues, including what appeared to be blood vessels and feather fibers. Skeptics, however, argued that what they claimed to be organic tissues were actually biofilms formed by microbes, which had invaded the fossil bones, Schweitzer and her team have continued to gather support for their conclusions, with the most recent evidence coming from molecular analysis of what seems to be bone cells from a T-Rex. After isolating the possible osteocytes, the team subjected them to tests, exposing them to antibodies that targeted a protein found in bird cells only. Considering that birds are dinosaur descendants, there was a reaction as would be expected if the cells were from dinosaurs. When subjected to other antibodies that target DNA, they bind to specific regions inside the cell membrane. After using the spectrometry technique on the dinosaur bone extract, the team of researchers found that the sequence of amino acid proteins match protein sequences present in all animal cells. The discovery of whole cells in a T-Rex bone amazed everyone. Schweitzer has reversed the usual belief by providing that 67 million-year-old fossils can still hold soft tissues inside, something that baffled many at the time, as it's thought it would have broken down within a million years. This discovery could shed some light on the evolution of dinosaurs and the workings of their muscles and blood vessels. The mystery remains, however, if this discovery was truly red blood cells. Jacob Vinther, a paleontologist at the University of Bristol, said the following about the discovery. It's problematic that no other lab has been able to replicate Mary Schweitzer's work. End quote. Mary's discovery continues to be debated amongst paleontologists. With reports of Yeti and Sasquatch surfacing from all around the world, it's no surprise to cryptozoologists that the Mongolian kingdoms also had their own reference to giant ape-men creatures that would dwell within the distant mountainsides and wilderness uninhabited by human beings. Known as the Aomas, these Mongolian hominids were believed to have inhabited the mountains across Central Asia, as well as the Altai Mountains of Western Mongolia, of which the majority of ancient reports were made. The oldest known verifiable record made of the Aomas was written by a man known as Hans Schauberger, a prisoner of the Mongol Khan that had been sent to Mongolia, and wrote about his observations of the surrounding landscape and people back during the year of 1420. In his journal, he wrote the following surrounding the Aomas creatures. On the same mountain there are savages, who are not like other people, and they live there. They are covered all over the body with hair, except the hands and face, and run about like other wild beasts in the mountains, and eat leaves, grass, and any things they can find. The lord of the country sent to Egedi a man and a woman from among these savages that had been taken in the mountain. End quote. Additional reports detail that the Aomas are consistently described as being human-like bipedal creatures, typically between the height of 5 and 6.5 feet tall, a monstrous size compared to people during that time period, and so were often depicted as giants. Their bodies have been detailed as being varying tinges of reddish and brownish, with ape-like animalistic facial features such as a pronounced and enlarged brow line, a wide flat nose and a weak chin. There have been endless debates both archaeological and scientific surrounding the existence of the Aomas, and whether or not it's a genuine species. Some have argued that the Aomas may have been a small population of surviving evolutionary ancestors, given that their descriptions made them more humanoid than ape-like in appearance, and that their omnivorous nature and animalistic behaviour pointed towards signs of less evolved intelligence. Others believe that the creature could have been a species entirely different from humanity, and could have been an undiscovered branching of the species in the past, caused by the physical separation of humans in the mountains and wilderness. Researchers will generally dismiss the validity of the Aomas, under the claim that for such creatures to exist in the modern day, it would require a rather large population that could not go unseen, and so argue that the species either never existed, or is now extinct in the modern day. Despite such sentiments, the Mongolian people today continue to claim to see the Aomas, when talking of terrifying encounters with the giants in the Altai Mountains. Going back in September, researchers at the Large Hadron Collider made a big announcement. They said that the Large Hadron Collider had found proof of high-energy particles, and that matter had been produced from light. Simone Pagan-Griso, a researcher at the US Department of Energy's Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, said the following: "If you go back and look at Maxwell's equations for classical electromagnetism, you'll see that two colliding waves sum up to a bigger wave. We only see these two phenomena recently observed by Atlas when we put together Maxwell's equations with special relativity and quantum mechanics in the so-called theory of quantum electrodynamics." End quote. Alessandro Truccoli, a researcher at Brooklyn Haven National Laboratory, had this to say: "If you read the equation of E equals mc squared from right to left, you'll see that a small amount of mass produces a huge amount of energy because of the c squared constant, which is the speed of light squared. But if you look at the formula the other way around, you'll see that you need to start with a huge amount of energy to produce even a tiny amount of mass." One of the issues when these types of discoveries are made is that many of us don't understand it. These scientists and researchers are experimenting with things that the majority of us don't understand, and it can be worrying when they're conducting these types of experiments, because sometimes they're going into uncharted territory. For those unaware, the Large Hadron Collider was built by the European Organization for Nuclear Research, also known as CERN. It's the world's largest and most powerful particle accelerator. It started up on the 10th of September 2008 and remains the latest addition to CERN's accelerator complex. The Large Hadron Collider consists of a 27-kilometer ring of superconducting magnets, with a number of accelerating structures to boost the energy of the particles along the way. CERN, the European Physics Research Centre, recently upgraded the Large Hadron Collider. The upgrade comes 6 years after the collider managed to provide scientists with answers to a riddle when it confirmed the Higgs boson exists. Scientists claim the upgrade would help in boosting luminosity of proton smashing experiments at the Large Hadron Collider, which can be found 17 miles underneath the border of Switzerland and France. It should help to boost the amount of particle collision tenfold, which would give them a much clearer picture of the subatomic world. It's just been announced though that a new super collider has been approved by CERN, and what's interesting is that it means the current one now looks tiny. The new collider will have a circumference of over 62 miles, meaning it will be 4 times bigger and much more powerful than the current one. However, this isn't going to be cheap, with researchers estimating it's going to cost around $23 billion. CERN said the following about the news: "Such a machine would produce copious amounts of Higgs bosons in a very clean environment. It would make dramatic progress in mapping the diverse interactions of the Higgs boson with other particles, and allow measurements of extremely high precision." They continued with the following on their website: "The Future Circular Collider Study is developing designs for a high-performance collider to extend the research currently being conducted at the Large Hadron Collider, once the latter reaches the end of its lifespan. The goal of the FCC is to greatly push the energy and intensity frontiers of particle colliders, with the aim of reaching collision energies of 100 TeVs, or tera-electron volts. This is in the search for new physics. The FCC study, hosted by CERN, is an international collaboration of more than 150 universities, research institutes and industrial partners from all around the world. The study will elaborate on different possibilities for circular colliders, new detector facilities, the associated infrastructure cost estimates, global implementation scenarios, as well as appropriate international governance structures. The FCC examines scenarios for 3 different types of particle collisions: hadron, proton-proton, and heavy ion, collisions like in the Large Hadron Collider; electron-positron collisions, as in the former LEP, and proton-electron collisions. One question that many people have asked is, where is this money coming from? Officials said they will be getting backing from EU members of states, but if it comes to it they may have to reach out to countries like China. For years now there's been worries that this machine might create something devastating. Various media outlets suggested this machine could be capable of creating a black hole, with CERN themselves admitting that although this is unlikely, it could happen. CERN have even said it would be great for science if this happened, as it would give them a chance to study possible extra dimensions. This discovery comes not long after researchers said they want to open a portal to another dimension. The researchers have said they're coming to the end of building a large piece of equipment that will help them test this, saying that they're looking forward to using this piece of equipment. One of the researchers on board have said they hope to discover something they call a hidden shadow world. They have described this as a concealed mirror world. However, it's hard for many to understand this as no hard evidence for this exists. Once again, it's caused worry among some, as they don't think we should be messing around with these sorts of things. Some have suggested that what researchers in Tennessee are talking about is actually dark matter. Scientists are quite open about dark matter, and have expressed they don't really know what it is. According to some studies though, dark matter makes up roughly 85% of the matter in the universe. Though this strange form of matter or energy can't be observed, by understanding the movements of stars, it was made obvious to researchers that there was a large amount of mass not accounted for within our galactic supercluster. Understanding what it is, why it can't be detected, and all of its strange properties could be the key to understanding big questions about the nature of our universe. Now that scientists have discovered and identified the Higgs boson, they are now trying to unravel another mystery. This comes in the form of particles from the dark world. The researchers are now trying to make measurements and simulations of dark matter. Trail cameras aren't just for capturing wildlife. They let us see what animals get up to when we're not around. Every so often though, they capture things we don't expect to see, and while in most cases these are easy to explain, sometimes they manage to capture creatures known as cryptids. These are animals that are not recognized by science, with some of the most well-known ones being that of Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster and the Dogman. As of right now though, scientists have said they don't exist, but others say we share this planet with many unknown creatures, and every so often they make themselves known. One interesting way that mysterious creatures make the news is by eyewitness reports, but what's more interesting is when these creatures are captured on camera. This is what happened with this creature, whose identity is currently not known. Recently, this photograph has been making the rounds on social media, and various theories have been put forward to try and explain it, with some suggesting that it's the famous Dogman cryptid. Most suggest that its feet look like that of the mysterious Dogman, a dog-like humanoid that's been reported in several parts of the world for the last few decades. Interestingly, many have detailed their reports, and when combing through each one, all of them are very similar in nature, making some suggest that what people are seeing is the same creature, and that it somehow managed to survive in various regions across our planet. The image has been shared on various groups, with some saying that it's some of the best proof we have of the cryptid. However, one issue is that there's not much information known about the photograph, so it's been tough to narrow down what wildlife is in the area. But believers have said it doesn't look like everyday wildlife, with one user saying the following: "These photographs have been floating around on the web for a while now, and the go-to is that it's either a Dogman or a Bigfoot. These two are the most common cryptids captured on trail cameras. In recent times there's been various photographs taken of Bigfoot, some of which have been snapped by trail cameras, so I think that this is the more likely candidate." End quote. The image of the foot though has confused people, with some saying it's too humanoid for it to be an animal, and being one of the main reasons why people suggest it's either a Dogman or a Bigfoot. For those unaware, all across North America are reports and tales of a creature that's become known as the Dogman. It's been described as looking like a strange werewolf-like creature, and seems to possess supernatural strength and abilities. Some eyewitnesses have often compared the creature to a more dog-like Sasquatch, whereas others believe it to be more of a werewolf beast, and at the centre of skinwalker legends. Interestingly, for the last 60 years there's been many reports about these creatures, and as with most of these tales, the majority of these stories follow a similar theme. Researchers have managed to pinpoint the first Dogman sighting to 1887. This was said to have occurred in Wexford County. The story goes that two lumberjacks were having a conversation when one of them spotted something mysterious. He described it as having a man's body and a dog's face. When they noticed it, they quickly left the scene, not wanting to stay and risk getting hurt by the large creature. Fast forward to 1961, and a security guard witnessed something similar in Big Rapids, Michigan. Most of the encounters with these creatures are just stories, and there's no way to back up what the individual saw. However, the security guard remembered that he had a camera, and was in fact able to snap a picture of the large beast. Those who have analysed it says it matches other eyewitness descriptions of the Dogman. Although the majority of Dogman sightings are from Michigan, there's been some outside of this area that have come forward with similar experiences. Cryptid researchers have said that trail cameras are the best way to capture these cryptids, and that there's no shortage of photographs. Unfortunately, they say the majority of these are brushed aside as fakes, even though there's no evidence to these claims, saying that this label was put on them so people stop talking about it. One person said the following about the photographs: "I think that is the Dogman creature. I've seen some say that it's Bigfoot, but for me the overall look of the creature matches that of the Dogman. The photo is really human-like, and matches many people's eyewitness accounts. My friends seen a Dogman and they said it was very human-like, except from the fact it was much bigger, standing around 7 feet tall, and having the overall build of a wolf, while also possessing the ability to walk on 2 legs. These cryptids fascinate me, and I'm sure there will be more photographs that will come to light in the future." End quote. One of the strangest reported encounters of the Dogman creature comes from California. According to the reporter, the story circles around that of a woman who claimed to have encountered the Dogman creature near the city of Sacramento, and this happened back in 1953. The sighting is believed to have taken place roughly 1,000 feet west of the American River, a short 2,000 feet east of the state capital, and in a small house owned by a family. According to the woman, she had this sighting when she was around 12 years old. As she was laying there, she claimed to have noticed a large mass moving in the window, as if someone or something was trying to stare inside. She quickly got up and went to the window to see a large face of a dog that seemed to be staring into the room through a low window. She claimed that the head of the dog looked very strange, much larger than that of a coyote or a normal dog, and it had a long straight snout, too dark to see what colour it could have been, but was believed to be a dark grey with glowing red eyes. She ran from the window and then noticed the creature began to stand up on its hind legs, and that it measured around 5 feet off the ground. She screamed for her parents to come, which scared the Dogman away before anything else could occur. They quickly went outside and claimed that nothing was nearby, and that the window was far too tall for a dog to be standing up and looking in. Unfortunately, nothing more can be gathered from the report, as the woman was unsure of the exact time of day the event had occurred. One of the greatest inventors to have lived was that of Nikola Tesla. At the time, his unique mind wasn't appreciated, and in some cases people even tried to brand him as a mystic, and someone who didn't know what he was talking about. However, these comments didn't stop him, and Nikola Tesla wasn't one to shy away from electricity and being able to harness it. One of his famous quotes was the following: "I have worked out a dynamic theory of gravity in all details and hope to give this to the world very soon." End quote. Nikola Tesla has impacted your life in one way or another. For example, electricity, radar, microwaves, the radio, drones, and many other things. All these came from the great mind that was Nikola Tesla. Recently, the FBI has released 64 pages of unreleased documents, and these include things like papers and documents that were collected shortly after Nikola Tesla passed away. For many years now, theories have been floating around as to why Tesla's work was collected by the government. Some have said that Tesla's work wasn't important and wouldn't have impacted us, and that the ideas and inventions he was working on didn't work or were just made up. So if this was the case, why then did the United States government quickly swoop in and collect his work shortly after he'd passed away? Tesla's work obviously caught the attention of the FBI as they wanted to comb through what he'd been working on. One of their reasons for doing this was to ensure that any of his work didn't get into the wrong hands. For this reason, they decided it would be best if Tesla's documents remained in the property of the Office of Alien Property Custodian. This was, however, until the documents and other pieces of Tesla's work mysteriously disappeared after the war. Interestingly, enough discussion had been created that the public was aware of some of these alleged inventions, and it even caused citizens to question director J. Edgar Hoover about what Tesla was working on. It's some of these excerpts though that have caused many people to question why the government would look into this, and not only that but also keep it a secret. These are some excerpts from the official FBI documents that got released. This letter will not reach you in time to sight flying saucers over New York on the night of June 13th from 10 PM to 1 AM, but there will again be full-scale operations of flying saucers over all American areas on July 1st. This will be in 3 phases as follows: New York areas July 1st 9 AM, Washington DC areas 9:25 AM, General North American areas after 9:25 AM, Central American areas 9:30 AM, South American areas 9:35 AM. Second phases same areas as above, beginning at 12 midday July 1st. Third phase full-scale operations over all American areas beginning at 7 PM on the evening of July 1st. The above information has been supplied by George King, editor of Cosmic Voice 88 The Drive Mansions, Fulham Road in London. Also, please note that George King has also published back issues of Cosmic Voice in 1 volume. This is beyond doubt the finest source of messages that we know of. George King is considered the best telepathic contacts that the space people have, although George Van Tassel is the finest we have in America. Margaret Storm has been assigned to certain work with the space people. As follows, she is writing a book, a story of the life of Nikola Tesla, and the part his inventions will play in the new age. Much of the data for this book has been supplied to Mrs. Storm through transcripts received on the Tesla set, a radio-type machine invented by Tesla in 1938 for interplanetary communication. Tesla died in 1943, and his engineers did not build the Tesla set until after his death. It was placed in operation in 1950, and since that time the Tesla engineers have been in close touch with spaceships. The space people have visited the Tesla engineers many times, and have told us that Tesla was a Venetian, brought to this planet as a baby in 1856, and left with Mr. and Mrs. Tesla in a remote mountain province in what is now Yugoslavia. On 26th and 27th of January 1943, an examination was made of the technical papers of Dr. Nikola Tesla, which after his passing had been stored in the Manhattan warehouse in New York City. This examination was made for the purpose of determining if any ideas of significant value in the present United States war effort could be found among his possessions. Participating in this examination were Mr. John C. Newton, New York Office of the Alien Property Custodian, Dr. Charles of the Washington Office of Scientific Research and Development, and John G. Trump of the Office of Scientific Research and Development of Massachusetts Institute of Technology. The following papers, which were regarded as typical of Nikola Tesla's writings and thoughts in the period of 1925 to 1942, were removed for the purpose of record and listed below in random order in which they were found, together with a brief individual abstract. Exhibit A: Possibilities of electrostatic generators. An updated article probably written about 1934 discussing the possibilities, as a source of high voltage DC power, of the Van de Graaff of electrostatic belt generator. The article states correctly the electrostatic principle employed in this device, and points out that such generators are not suitable for commercial high-powered applications, though of undoubted scientific value. Tesla's wireless tower erected in 1902 on Long Island is stated in this memorandum to have charged to 30 million volts. Exhibit B: Reactive force of glycerin and dynamite. An updated memorandum involving some calculations of the explosive power of certain compounds, and then deviating to a discussion of the possibility of transmitting power by mechanical vibrations along the Earth's crust. Exhibit C: Process of degasifying, refining and purifying metals. A 40-page memorandum probably written around 1930 detailing with the above subject, and proposing new theories of capillarity and surface tension. These correspondence indicated these had been submitted to various industry companies. Exhibit D: Replying to Antorg regarding the generation of high voltage and acceleration of charged particles. This document, dated 8th November 1935, answers questions raised by Soviet engineers and scientists regarding Tesla's proposal of Ray. From this answer is deduced that the proposal concerned the generators of high voltage by electrostatic means. These means consisted of a high voltage terminal, presumably supported on an isolating column, and charged by a gaseous charge conveying medium passing between ground and terminal. The ideas contained in this memorandum are fairly similar to the bulk conveyor electrostatic generator, proposed by Van de Graaff, and do not appear to offer any unusual features." End quote. There are some, however, that believe these documents are not telling us everything, and that there's a possibility some of Tesla's work and inventions are being held back. It's interesting because during Tesla's life, he claimed to have contacted and heard voices through transmitters. Tesla wrote extensively in his notes that when he made the first radio, capable of receiving and broadcasting his signal, as soon as he turned on the device he could already hear another person's voice on the other side. He said he could hear a voice calling out his name, saying Tesla 123. Some have suggested that what he was hearing may have been the space people. Going back in early September, it was announced that the FBI was investigating strange reports made by pilots. 2 pilots detailed how they saw a mysterious humanoid figure on a jetpack near Los Angeles International Airport. The airline pilot said the humanoid was around 3,000 feet in the air, and that whatever it was flying incredibly fast. Several US media outlets have managed to get their hands on the alleged recordings of the pilots. During the conversation back in September, one of the pilots said the following: "Tower American 1997, we just passed a guy in a jetpack." To which the controller on the ground responds with the following: "America 1997, okay, were they off to your left side or your right side?" The pilot replies saying the individual was on the left side, around 300 feet or so, but sticking with our altitude. A few seconds later, another pilot reports the following to the tower: "We just saw the guy pass by us in a jetpack." The controller then tells the pilots to use caution when flying in the area, and also puts out a warning stating that there's someone flying around on a jetpack. Someone in the background can be heard saying only in LA. It's now been reported that the same thing has happened again. Pilots and crew members flying close to Los Angeles International Airport once again saw a mysterious humanoid on a jetpack, saying that whatever this was, it was flying at 6,000 feet. The following conversation was recorded. China Airlines 006. We just saw an object at 6,000. LAX Tower. 006 Heavy, can you say that one more time please? China Airlines 006. We saw a flying object like a flight suit jetpack at 6,000. LAX Tower. Was it a UAV or a jetpack? China Airlines 006. Like a jetpack. Too shiny is too far. LAX Tower. 006 Heavy. Roger, thank you. Emirates 215 Heavy, there was a jetpack reported around 30 miles ahead. This soon caused various people to give their opinions on what the object could be, with some saying that it's strange how this happened twice now, and noting that although we have jetpack-like devices that can take humans into the air, we don't have anything that's able to reach these kinds of altitudes, and that also has the ability to overtake planes. One person said the following: "It's weird how both of these reports have been made so close to one another. It's a really interesting case. Could this be some kind of new technology that's carrying out experiments above Los Angeles? Either way, it's odd the pilots are saying that it looks like a humanoid on a jetpack. To my knowledge, there's no jetpack in the world that's able to take a human to these kinds of altitudes." End quote. Various officials have also given their opinions on the strange sightings, saying that on paper this sounds like a person on a jetpack, but when you hear the speeds they're going and the altitude they're reaching, this is very unlikely to be a human on a modern day jetpack. They can't reach these heights, and some of them even need machinery like helicopters to get them to these heights. Other people have decided to look at other possibilities, one of which is that this could be linked to UFOs. Although this isn't supported, at this moment in time technically this is a UFO. It's a flying object that can't be identified. Other amateur researchers have come forward and said this isn't the first time this type of sighting has been reported, going on to say that nearly all of these cases still to this day remain a mystery. The number of pilots who have come forward in detailed seeing mysterious things isn't anything new, but perhaps the sad part about this is that most of these don't get taken seriously. It seems almost bizarre that someone like a pilot can report something mysterious, and no further investigation is carried out. After all, these are the people that spend the most amount of time in the sky, so when they report something strange it should be taken more seriously. Back in 2014, news broke that pilots on a passenger plane were left confused when they witnessed a flying humanoid going past them at 3,500 feet. They couldn't wrap their heads around how, number one, a human was able to zip past them so quick, and secondly, where they'd come from. Aviation experts then admitted that they were too baffled by the reported sightings of a flying humanoid. After making the news, the flying humanoid was then given the name of the Superman of Macclesfield. The mysterious individual suddenly appeared out of nowhere and was able to overtake the Airbus 320. This was while the plane was flying close to Cheshire Town in England. The pilot and first officer reported the strange sighting to air traffic control, where at first they thought the individual may have been a paraglider. However, they couldn't see any gear on the humanoid and so ruled this out. Things got even more confusing when air traffic control reported that they hadn't picked anything up on radar. It was as if the mysterious individual appeared and then suddenly vanished. Teams on the ground were sure that the individual that was seen must have been a paraglider. However, further checks were carried out to see if any paragliders or people using parachutes were in the area, and it turns out that no one was in the area during the strange encounter. Officials at the UK Airprox Board, who investigate near misses in British airspace, came forward and said they think this is one of those cases that will likely never be solved. The report states the following. They first sighted the object a few hundred meters in the 11 o'clock position, 200 to 300 feet above. It passed down the left-hand side of the aircraft at 100 to 200 meters. The crew only saw it fleetingly. There was no time to take avoiding action, and they reported they based their assumptions on it being a person under a canopy. But at the time the skies were clear and the pilots had visibility of around 6 miles. None of them remember seeing a canopy. It wasn't long before experts at the British Hang Gliding and Paragliding Association got involved, and even they said that at the time of the report, and due to the weather conditions, it would have been impossible for a single flyer to be in the area, and travelling at the speeds they were. Many strange creatures have been reported throughout the years, and although some of these get explained after further investigation, some remain a mystery, leaving the eyewitness with more questions than answers. It's these reports that have led some to investigate these creatures. These individuals call themselves cryptid researchers and say that there's many creatures out there not known to science. Due to all these reports, enough data has been collected to give people a good idea of the creature in question, and it seems that there's no shortage of mysterious creature reports. One interesting one that's currently making the rounds is that of a USPS worker who detailed their encounter with a 7-foot-tall red-eyed humanoid. The encounter was shared to the UFO Clearinghouse website, in which the eyewitness detailed the following. I just left work at the USPS sorting facility, which is at O'Hare Airport, and this was at 11 PM on Thursday the 24th of September. I was walking to my car when I saw something standing at the far end of the parking lot. At first I thought it was a very tall person with a long coat. As I got closer I unlocked my car, which caused my headlights to come on. My headlights hit the person standing around 20 to 25 feet from my car, causing it to turn and look right at me. I saw that this was not some person, but some red-eyed creature, and what appeared to be coat were actually wings, which it spread out as it turned to look at me. At first I thought it was some kind of very large bird, but I've never seen any bird that stood almost 7 feet tall. I'm 5'4" and this thing looked taller than me by at least 2 feet. This thing then started making some type of chirping sound, almost a half chirp and a half click, like someone was clicking their tongue but much faster. It then made some type of screeching sound and took off running towards me. It got within 10 feet of me and took off into the air and flew above me. I was screaming hysterically as I crouched down behind the car's open door, which I then dived into head first. I was in a near panic as I tried to start the car, close and lock the doors and turn on my interior lights. I started my car and took off out the building lot and flew down the road till I hit the main road. I got home and told my husband, who also works at the same facility, and he was the one who told me about the sightings of this creature. I was scared and I hope I never see this thing again. This thing is roaming around the area and it's scaring people. I hope the airport decides to do something about this thing." End quote. There's many that have said this creature only matches one cryptid, and that's the Mothman, a large bat or bird-like creature that's been witnessed by people for the last few decades. Some are worried as it said the Mothman appears right before a tragedy, with some saying that the creature acts as a type of warning, while others believe the creature itself might be a type of bad omen. One user said the following about the encounter. "This sounds exactly like the Mothman. This creature is rarely seen, but those who see it usually describe something very similar to what this person did. If it was seen near the airport though, there should be plenty of security cameras, so the first thing I'd be doing is checking the CCTV cameras." End quote. Ever since the experiences seen on the night of the Silver Bridge collapse in the state of West Virginia, many have often believed that the Mothman creature has been at the center of this strange occurrence. In fact, in countless witness accounts, it appears that the collapse of the Silver Bridge had been predicted by many who encountered the Mothman, of whom seemed to be in the attempts of trying to prevent the event from ever occurring. Since this event, various people have come forward with their stories. Witnesses who've encountered the creature have given researchers a detailed description. Most can agree that it's bipedal, having large wings and a small head. However, some have described the head as being in the middle of its body, while others have said its head looks more similar to that of an owl. The colour of this creature is usually always described as being dark in colour. It's most commonly seen during the nighttime, helping it blend in with its surroundings. The Mothman is said to stand around 6 to 7 feet tall, having a wingspan of between 8 and 15 feet, and being able to let out a high-pitched screech. The eyes are red in colour and large. In fact, eyewitnesses have said it's one of the first things they notice about the creature. Interestingly, some may not be aware that this creature hasn't just been witnessed in the United States, but many countries across the globe. For example, here in England we call this creature the Owlman. The first reported sighting of the Mothman comes from a small town that's located more than 80 miles away from Point Pleasant. The story goes that according to a group of 5 individuals of whom worked as diggers in the town of Clendenin, as they were working at a plot getting ready to dig, they heard a strange noise in the distance. At first they were unaware of what could have been causing the strange noise, but it persisted until one of them spotted a figure floating above them. They claimed that it looked human, almost as if a person was floating without the use of ropes, strings, wings or hover designs of any kind, and that this strange humanoid figure was moving between the autumn trees in the area. They reported that all 5 of them saw this human-like creature, and believed it to have originally been a prank of some kind. But as they watched it slowly move away from them, they believed the creature to be far more ominous than usual. Although some have suggested the creature is a large bird, such as that of an owl or a crane, eyewitnesses say that what they witnessed definitely wasn't a bird, and that this creature is something entirely different. In the last 100 years, humans have managed to accomplish a lot. Space agencies have sent humans to the moon, sent high-tech satellites above our planet, and are now setting their sights on Mars, saying that within the next 3 decades they hope to put humans on the Martian soil. Perhaps though one of the most interesting things organisations are currently doing is hunting for extraterrestrial life. The European Space Agency, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and NASA have been working very hard to find out if we're completely alone. Today we have a big number of projects that are made to scan the stars for signs of intelligent life. Despite our efforts, we have yet to make contact. Various theories have been put forward for what life could look like, with some researchers even coming forward and saying that the human mind can't comprehend what's truly out there. One of the things that everyday people are now able to do is stargaze, with various companies offering high-powered telescopes. These give everyday people the opportunity to see our nearby planets in much more detail. However, if you're not able to afford one of these telescopes, you can look through old NASA photographs. Some of the most interesting ones are those from the Apollo missions, but not for the reason you may think. When you think of the Apollo missions, you may think of Apollo 11, when humans first landed on the moon, which has been described as being one of the most impressive things that humans have done, showcasing what we can achieve when our best scientists come together. There's others though who have said that these photographs are hiding secrets, and one of these was taken during Apollo 17. This photograph was taken during the Apollo 17 mission, with amateur researchers saying they think they found an anomaly. It was Scott C. Waring of UFO Sightings Daily website that made the discovery. He said the following: While exploring the NASA Apollo moon photos, I came across a photo that showed a black circle with slightly uneven edges like a crater. I found this odd since I could not see the bottom of the crater, but such black circle craters have been discovered before. When I looked at the photo right before and after this one, the object was no longer there. Instead of an opening, there was a lunar grey surface. The black hole was not visible. I knew from the past that there is a record on April 29, 2007, when an astronomer, Alberto Mayo, who lives in Italy, saw and recorded a giant black circle that moved across the lunar surface. Then it changed direction at a right angle. End quote. Others, though, have gone against the idea of it being something mysterious, and explain that it likely has a natural explanation. This person said the following: "Whenever you see strange shadows, it's important to look at every possibility. The most likely answer here is that the shadow was caused by the Apollo equipment. Many of these Apollo photographs allegedly show mysterious shadows, but many of these are just the modules or other man-made objects." End quote. The reason these ideas are put forward is because some think the moon may not be natural, but rather it's actually a base for otherworldly crafts. Before we carry on, it's important to note that scientists don't believe this theory, stating that there's no evidence to back this up. However, some have used previous studies to back up this idea. On November 14, 1969, in an attempt to better understand the makeup of the moon, NASA placed multiple seismic readers across its surface, and then soon launched a lunar space module on a collision course for the moon. The idea behind this theory was to allow the lunar module to strike the moon with such a dramatic force that it would send specific frequencies throughout the entire core of the moon, and allow the seismic readers to capture this data and help to accurately map out the inside of the moon. What they soon discovered was baffling. Original theories and hypotheses had suggested that these reverberations would not last longer than a minute, given that the surface of our moon is covered in mostly basalt, of which would work to absorb these reverberations, and given its extensive presence, was believed to make up the majority of the mantle on the moon. It was mathematically calculated to prevent the seismic activity from lasting for a prolonged period of time. However, as the lunar module struck the moon, the entire celestial body began reverberating for over an hour. NASA scientists described its reverberations similar to that of a church bell ringing. Today, there is still no reasonable hypothesis for this cause, and no further information can be gathered given NASA's lack of future missions to the moon. The most legitimate theory available at this time comes from the works of Russian researchers Michael Vasin and Alexander Shabakov that had put forward the artificial theory. They began to notice that the craters of the moon, regardless of the impact size or diameter, all equaled out in depth. They also noted that these craters generally had very shallow and flat interiors, and in other areas even contained convex bottoms. They hypothesized that the meteors are hitting an armored hole underneath the basalt surface, preventing further depths into the celestial body, and believing the moon to be a possible spaceship created by complex alien life. This theory was only reinforced as the mathematics for the moon and its density became an apparent issue. Given its size, location, and theorized general makeup, the moon should have a density of roughly 5.5 grams per cubic centimeter. However, given its orbital path and overall physics, we find the moon to only be 3.3 grams per cubic centimeter, causing the moon to be much less dense compared to that of our planet, despite theories of the moon's creation coming from the materials of the Earth. NASA said the following on their website: "The entire moon rang like a gong, vibrating and resonating for almost an hour. The best guess was the moon was composed of a rubble a lot deeper below its surface than anybody had assumed. The internal structure being fractured instead of a solid mass could bounce the seismic energy from piece to piece for quite a while." End quote. Regardless, this idea is not backed by modern scientists, saying that our moon is very much natural, and that there's nothing on there that points to there being life. For years, Antarctica has been a place of mystery. Its rough conditions meant it was one of the last places people were able to inhabit. Yet in recent years, various bases have been built here, with some officials even calling this place home. Although it's incredible what man has achieved, some have said that other motives brought them here. Although researchers deny the claims that anything strange is going on down in Antarctica, amateur researchers have said there's so much evidence to point that there's more going on in Antarctica than what we're being told. Various different photographs have been presented to back up the idea that Antarctica houses various artifacts, and one of the most common ones that researchers go to is that of unidentified flying objects. Although a megalithic structure might be hard to explain, a truly impossible discovery for researchers to dismiss is the supposed findings of unidentified flying objects, saying that these can be found all across the Antarctic continent, and have been sighted via the use of satellite surveillance of the entire icy landmass. Researchers have said these are the best pieces of evidence that there are UFOs in the area, and that this may be the sole reason why we wanted to go there so badly in the first place. First found by internet theorists, online images have surfaced of flying saucer-like shapes hiding within ice caves and remote areas across the Antarctic. Further satellite images can also be seen of large outcroppings that many researchers have speculated are possible crashed spaceships, which can be seen casting large shadows in patterns directly following each other. Amateur researchers have also claimed there's evidence of trapped unidentified flying objects deep within the glacial formations, and they're just trapped there waiting to be uncovered by research teams stationed on the southern continent. One recent photograph that was sent to us was this one, with the individual claiming that it shows a large object that crashed into the thick snow. They claim that the object and trail that can be seen goes on for several hundred feet, and says that whatever this object is, it was big enough to leave a large trail behind it. They said the following: "While looking on Google Maps, I discovered this strange object in the snow. It looks like something crashed here and left a large trail behind it. I've not seen many of these types of photos before, and there wasn't anything around to suggest that it could be something natural. What's interesting about this one is there seems to be a large imprint where the object would have been, but it appears that it's no longer there, leaving me to think that it may have been taken away, or that it somehow managed to fly off. I've shown a few people this and they don't think it's natural, saying that it does look like something large skidded in the snow." End quote. Another researcher said the following about Antarctica: "I think that there's definitely something going down in Antarctica. There's so many anomalies that have come to light in recent years, and I think they're here to retrieve these objects. It's why they don't let on what's going on down here. Many strange stories and discoveries have been made in this region, some of which include heavy-duty military trucks, large structures such as pyramids, and the large UFOs that have been found embedded in the ice. It would seem that Antarctica definitely has its secrets." End quote. When seeing these types of photographs, they do look like crash sites, and it's one of the reasons that the UFO community shares these types of images, saying that this is proof that unidentified flying objects have made contact with our planet. It's also fueled more speculation, as according to many theories, Antarctica is home to many mysterious happenings. It's not just UFOs that can be found in and around the dense snow. Amateur researchers have also said that Antarctica is home to the giant pyramids. Believed to be much larger than the pyramids at Giza, researchers began noticing strange mountains that did not seem to match with the overall landscape of the region. Not only did these supposed large mountains not exist anywhere close to a mountain range, but the region in which they inhabit do not appear to even have the stresses or strains of the tectonic plates that could cause a potential mountain range in the first place. Not only this, but the size of the mountains in these areas end up displaying the proportions of a perfect pyramid, with 4 even sides, a symmetrical peak, and the same degree in slope gradient compared to that of the large pyramids at Giza. Images of these structures in high definition can also be found thanks to researchers, as they say there's many of these giant structures scattered throughout the region of Antarctica, leading to a number of legends surrounding the icy continent that speak of advanced civilizations before the existence of human civilization, and they once inhabited the land in a far distant and unremembered past. Others have pointed out that pyramid-like structures are found in almost every region across our planet. So why is it so unlikely that they wouldn't exist in Antarctica? Once again, believers have said places like this need to be studied more and taken more seriously. Scientists say though these structures are not proof of UFOs or pyramids, and that what people are experiencing is that of pareidolia. This is when the mind plays tricks on us and makes us think that something's there when it isn't. However, in recent years proof of dinosaurs and ancient fauna have been found in this region, showcasing that at one point many different plant species and animals would have called this place home, with amateur researchers saying it's just a matter of time before ancient man gets discovered in this region, and that this will help back up the pyramid theory. It's true that we know more about what's going on the surface of the moon than what's happening within our own oceans. Our oceans are teeming with incredible mysteries and strange occurrences that have left experts all around the world baffled and amazed since their discoveries. In fact, few of these discoveries are as mysterious in their nature as the humanoid sea people that have been witnessed by numerous historical figures in the past. Referred to as mermaids, these elusive half-human, half-fish hybrids are at the centre of strange sightings, and what's interesting is that they've been reported all around the world. Although modern scientists have spoken out about these sightings, and say that there's no proof these underwater humanoids ever existed, researchers point to historical accounts where people would detail their encounters with mermaid-like creatures. With that being said, those scientists have proof to back this up. One of these fake mermaids was created by P.T. Barnum. The creature went by the name of the Fiji mermaid, and it was created using the torso of a monkey and the tail end of a fish. When the creation was made, it looked like a real mermaid, and interestingly, this is what people go to when they think of P.T. Barnum's mermaid. However, there's stories that P.T. Barnum actually had another mermaid, and he was getting ready to reveal it to the public, but this one was said to be genuine. A fire happened in New York City going back in 1865. It took out various properties, one of which was P.T. Barnum's. However, it's not until you start looking at the events surrounding the fire that some things don't seem to add up. The official story goes that a museum employee ran out of the basement saying that a fire was tearing through his office. After this, the fire quickly spread throughout the whole building, causing people to run out into the streets, and even ending some of the lives of the animals that were trapped inside. However, some theorists have said this isn't the real reason behind the fire, going on to say that someone did this on purpose because P.T. Barnum was going to reveal a real mermaid to the world. This is said to be one of only a few photographs that survived, and allegedly shows the giant mermaid that was going to be revealed to the world. The creature clearly isn't a human, possessing a large brow ridge, webbed hands and feet and dark sunken eyes. One of the issues is that there's really not much information about the photograph, with it only being featured on a few websites with limited information. One person said the following: "I've read stories that P.T. Barnum was going to show the world this new mermaid, and that this one was the real deal. But I believe the photographs might not be real, and are actually recreations of what people said it looked like." It seems that some are of the opinion that the fire was started on purpose to stop people seeing this exhibit, with others saying that the fire may have been a diversion, and that the creature was soon taken from the museum, being taken somewhere secret where nobody would see it. One of the issues is because P.T. Barnum was known to fake and exaggerate what he was showing to the public. Many don't believe in these accounts, with others saying that the story isn't real and that the photographs are fake. This hasn't stopped people though from believing in mermaid stories. One of these stories is that of Captain John Smith. According to old myths and rumours published back in 1849, during the year 1611, as Captain John Smith and his crew were travelling around the West Indies, they spotted a strange creature in the water beside them. The crew described the creature as looking like that of a woman for the upper part of the body, except for a few key changes in the face, such as that of the eyes, of which were described as larger and more round, a short nose, long ears and bright green hair. The lower part of the creature's body was described as being similar to that of a dolphin's body, and not that of a fish or scales of any kind. Interestingly, when researchers looked for the source of the tale concerning Captain John Smith and his crew's encounter with the mermaid, they found that the original author for the piece, that was later published in 1849, was the author of The Three Musketeers. This has led many skeptics to believe that the stories could have been fabricated. However, at the time the author was more well versed in writing articles pertaining to non-fiction, and had even co-authored other pieces that involved true stories of encounters with mermaids. This helps to not only prove the author's fascination with the subject, but that the rigorous fact-checking involved with publications at the time more than helped to steer the author clear from fictitious accounts in his works. Still to this day, many claim the account is nothing more than a forgery, despite evidence of Captain John Smith and his crew encountering other strange creatures in the sea, and often writing about them. There's been other stories of mermaids in recent years as well. One of the most well-known ones is that of the Israeli mermaid. Back in 2009, there were witness reports coming from the local residents living in the Israeli town of Kiryat Yam that had believed they had seen what they described as a mermaid swimming close to the shores of the town, that's located next to the Mediterranean Sea. According to the reports, a man by the name of Som Cohen was one of the first to report the sightings. According to his account, they first saw what looked like an injured woman laying on the sand, before she quickly jumped into the water and disappeared. Others claim that at sunset you can catch a glimpse of mermaids swimming by the shore, and sometimes they will even observe onlookers and go to the surface to get a better look. Interestingly, the increased number of these sightings have left researchers in the town wondering what these creatures could be. In order to get to the bottom of these claims, the town has offered a $1 million reward for anyone of whom can gather evidence as to the creature's origins and likeness. This has led to a number of different researchers, tourists and cryptid enthusiasts racing to try and uncover the cause of these sightings, and what could very well be the truth behind the accounts. Skywatching is something that many people do. For some it's calming, and for others is a way to escape everyday life. Watching the sky at night can help to reduce stress, and sometimes you'll even see something interesting, for example a meteorite flying past. However, there are those that have seen mysterious things, and this has caused some to spend countless hours skywatching in the hopes of capturing something interesting. It seems though that most people are actually unsuccessful in seeing something strange, and as fate would have it, the majority of people who do see mysterious things are usually just going about their everyday life, and isn't expecting to see anything strange. This was the case for one truck driver who spotted something mysterious in the sky. The driver described seeing a mysterious object in the sky while walking back to his truck. They were able to record the object for a minute before they said it vanished. Interestingly, when shared online it caused various people to put forward different theories for what it could be, with some saying that it may have been an unidentified flying object, a drone or even a portal that opened up. Square-shaped UFOs are not uncommon, and various people have recorded these objects in various countries. UFOs doesn't mean aliens, is just an object that can't be identified at that moment in time. Although the footage is a little blurry, the drivers said they tried the best they could to record it, and that it didn't help that the weather conditions were super windy. Regardless, they managed to record the object. The driver said the following: "I'm a truck driver, and while walking back to my truck I saw this object. I went to find a high viewpoint and it was gone." After being posted to online UFO groups, some suggested that it may have been a plastic bag or a piece of garbage. However, others were not open to this idea because the object in question does not flap around. Rather, it just looks to be flying at a moderate speed. Take a look at the footage. UFO sightings are nothing new. For years, these mysterious crafts have been reported from various regions across our planet, with some ancient scriptures proving that they've been around since the time of the aeroplane. It's this and the thousands of sightings that are reported every year that make people believe that perhaps we're not being told the truth about these crafts. After all, if you have a craft that's able to travel vast distances in a matter of seconds, this could be considered dangerous if it got into the wrong hands. It's for this reason and various others that people say we're kept in the dark, or at least we were. Interestingly, the government seems to be more open to discussing unidentified flying objects, and this has caused some to think that perhaps an announcement is on the way. After all, the government hasn't exactly been open to the idea of extraterrestrial life, even going as far as mocking it and those who believe in it. Different shaped crafts have been reported, with some being more common than others. The most common shaped UFOs reported are those of the disc, triangle, orb, cigar and boomerang. Interestingly, recent reports that came from Eric W. Davis, who works at the United States Department of Defense, states that the United States government is in possession of recovered off-road vehicles. Although skeptics have been quick to claim that Eric W. Davis is nothing more than a fraud making outrageous claims, key figures have also come forward to address the claims, including the former director of the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, Louis Elizondo. Additionally, in regards to the program and its ties to the passing of the Intelligence Authorization Act, former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid commented that he'd been involved in the effort and hopes that the UFO investigation program will seek further evidence of other potential recoveries of extraterrestrial crafts. Even the acting chairman of the Senate Select Committee of Intelligence, Marco Rubio, provided an official statement saying the following: "Maybe there is a completely sort of boring explanation for it, but we need to find out." Expressing concern that the increased reports of unidentified crafts over American military bases is definitely seen as a threat to the national security of the United States. Although Marco Rubio believes the sightings could be attributed to a possible technological leap made by China or Russia, Eric Davis and Louis Elizondo are far more certain of the crafts originating from an off-world source. Across several interviews for mass media outlets, Louis Elizondo claimed that not only do these crafts exhibit behaviours that appear to defy the very laws of aviation, but that these crafts were found to be 100% not man-made, and were out of the scope of human capabilities. His reasoning for this claim was that the crafts investigated demonstrated hypersonic capabilities that were described as being far beyond the scope that's physically tolerable by a human being, of whom would experience a high amount of G's to the point that it would either be fatal or seriously wound them. This meant that whoever or whatever was piloting these aircrafts appeared to be non-human. Not only this, but the technical developments of the crafts also made it very apparent that the creation of these unidentified flying objects were vastly superior to anything man-made. Louis Elizondo describes in one of his many reports regarding the subject matter as saying the following: "There is a lot we really don't know. We have identified anomalous aircrafts, craft that does not have any obvious flight surfaces, forms of propulsion, and maneuvering in ways that include extreme maneuverability beyond the healthy G-forces of anything biological, low observability and positive lift. These aircraft, will call them aircraft, display capabilities not in the US arsenal, or any other militaries. This finding urges the Department of Defense to treat the existence of these crafts not as random sightings and made-up accounts, but rather as genuine worries and threats that must be actively defended against, and analyse in attempts to reverse engineer the mechanisms behind the craft, and to devise ways to deactivate them, and prepare for an eventual confrontation with these unidentified crafts." Going back a few days ago, a rare blue moon could be seen. This was the first time in 70 years that it landed on Halloween. It was the second full moon to happen in 1 month, meaning it got labelled as a blue moon. Interestingly, it was actually a mix-up that happened in 1999 that got it this name. The term blue moon was actually meant to refer to the third full moon in a calendar month, but the label continues today. Regardless, it's still quite rare for this to happen twice in a month, and what's even rarer is for one of these to happen on Halloween. The last time this happened was back in 1944. During these events, many people point their cameras and telescopes towards the moon. Interestingly though, some people capture more than what they intended, and this was the case for one person that captured the moon in Birmingham. However, when looking back at their image, they noticed that it contained something strange. They soon shared their image online where various people gave their opinions on what they thought it could be. The person behind the photograph said the following: "This photograph was captured above Birmingham in England. As with most people, I looked out for the moon as it was a blue moon. I have a Canon camera and a low-budget telescope, so decided to get both out for the occasion. After snapping several dozen photographs, I then went in to review them. However, on one of them I noticed 4 lights sitting close to the moon. I'm not sure what they are, and I didn't see them as when I was taking the photographs. I was looking at the camera screen and I think they would have been too small to pick up. Regardless, I have no idea what they are, and I'm interested to see what people make of them." End quote. Various users gave their opinions on the photograph, with one man saying the following: "I'm someone who does a lot of astrophotography, and one of the issues is that you can get light interference. However, when you're taking photographs of something big such as the moon, this isn't so much of an issue. The moon is one of the easiest things to photograph in the night sky because it's so big. Although you can sometimes get the odd light, you never normally see 4 in a line like this. Very strange." End quote. Others went down the route of suggesting that what the person captured was an unidentified flying object, with this person saying the following: "I've seen many different photographs that show similar things. I don't think these are natural, but rather come under the category of UFOs. These shaped crafts are commonly seen on Earth, and various amateur photographers have captured similar looking objects." End quote. As UFO researchers have pointed out in the past, the moon is actually one place where many alleged UFOs have been captured, with researchers saying that there's more going on around our moon than what we're being told. Scientists and researchers though have spoken out and said this isn't the case, and these strange lights are most likely debris on the camera, or lights coming from a different source. Amateur researchers have hit back at these claims though, and go into detail that places like the moon and the International Space Station are actually hotspots for UFOs. For those that are unaware, the International Space Station has a variety of cameras to monitor spacewalks, and other areas that need to be under 24-hour surveillance. This has allowed the agency to play live footage on internet shows, websites, live television broadcasting and so on, and this is to help build up an interest in space. Recently there have been numerous events where footage of strange objects can be seen floating in the distance, and this has led many to believe that it's extraterrestrial in origin. After such incidents are spotted, the footage will later be removed or edited. The live feed will be cut or the entire incident will be completely ignored by NASA. One incident happened back in 2014, and amateur researchers have said it's some of the best evidence they have of a UFO in space. The object could be seen on one of the live cams. Many people across the world were watching on this particular occasion. However, something they couldn't explain was the strange object that quickly made itself known. The object appeared to be sleek and orange in colour. After only a few seconds, those watching the live feed said it docked onto the International Space Station, and shortly after it did this the live cams were shut down, with those watching the event saying that all they could now see was a blue or purple screen. Interestingly, many who watch the live cams have said this is a common occurrence when an unidentified flying object is seen in the background. Others have even said that NASA themselves sometimes zoom in to get a better look at the object, but after determining that it's not part of any spacecraft they quickly shut off the cameras. It's this type of activity that's caused some to believe that there could be mysterious objects visiting our planet. The object that could be seen at the International Space Station wasn't there very long before the live cams were shut off. Since then it hasn't been seen since, but this was enough for people as they were able to take screenshots of the strange looking object. After this, various people started to give their ideas on what they thought the object was. One individual suggested they were looking at a genuine UFO, and that NASA were not quick enough to shut off the cameras on this occasion, leaving all those who tuned in to see the object very clearly. Astronomers have said these objects can be explained using everyday things, but people have struggled to explain some of the objects that seem close to the International Space Station, with amateur researchers saying that some of these are definitely not space debris, with one UFO researcher saying the following: "I understand that some of these objects can be explained as space debris, and that makes sense. But it's obvious that some of these are not space debris. Also, if this was the case, why does the space station cameras shut off when they come into view? If they were just space debris, why shut down the live feed? It's this kind of behaviour that makes people question these objects." End quote. Researchers have said that recent discoveries only give us a small glimpse into our history, go on to say that over 98% of our ancient history has been lost. Ancient carvings and structures can give us an idea of what certain civilizations were capable of, and there's some within the archaeological community that disagree with how advanced certain cultures were. One that's shrouded in mystery is that of the Maya. Recently, very strange photographs have been shared on social media, claiming that amateur archaeologists found these artifacts while digging. One report states the artifacts were discovered during the building of the Mayan train. Currently, construction work is underway to build a large railway in Mexico. The construction began in December of 2018, with various people coming forward and saying that strange discoveries have been made in the area. These mysterious artifacts were discovered in a region known as Quintana Roo. There's no other way to describe these artifacts other than they look like extraterrestrials, possessing big eyes, a large oval head, and just matching the overall shape of the grey alien. This has had social media users convinced that these are the real deal. Because these images were only posted recently though, it's been tough to track down more information about them, who found them and where they're currently being held. Amateur researchers though were obviously excited when these artifacts started to be shared, claiming that it could be the evidence to back up their claims that UFOs have been visiting us for thousands of years. One of the things that people struggle with is trying to track down where these first came from, and who took the images. The stories behind these images usually follows a similar theme. A person or group of people digging close to the Mayan temples discover strange-looking artifacts. Reports on where these artifacts were found varies depending on who you talk to, with websites not revealing much information. Regardless though, they report that a team of archaeologists were surprised to find the ancient ruins, saying that it's one of the biggest discoveries in the area to date. Some have claimed that these are too good to be true, with one Mexican archaeologist saying that these are fakes, and that although they were allegedly found with other Mayan artifacts, it's thought they were placed here in order to make the findings seem more genuine, with one amateur archaeologist saying the following: "I don't think these images are fake. I think these are real objects, but they are not from the same age as the other artifacts found in the area. These were likely created in a nearby workshop and placed there on purpose. The overall look of them is just off. They don't look old and look very amateur in appearance." End quote. People are still waiting for more information to come out about these artifacts. When you think of space exploration, you may think of companies like NASA and modern-day equipments like rockets and space stations. However, there's various scriptures and books that detail our ancient ancestors possessing knowledge of the stars. This has caused some interesting conversations to be put forward, with some saying that our ancestors may have had more knowledge of the stars' celestial bodies in the universe than we previously thought. How then were they able to do this? Back in those days they didn't possess the technology or equipment we have today, or did they? Drawings and writings may contradict this, and although this sounds outlandish, these theories are based on evidence that we've managed to discover in recent years. Perhaps one of the most interesting discoveries comes from that of the Mayan civilization. In the 7th century AD, Pacal the Great was the ruler of this time. During his time, he oversaw some of the most impressive sites of Palenque. During this time, the civilization was able to build things that many would say was impossible. They built complex streams that would transport them fresh water. However, one image of the ruler has caused much speculation among certain groups. The image in question depicts the king descending into the Mayan underworld. All around the carving we see objects that are said to represent celestial objects. This includes Venus, the Sun and the Moon. Some individuals have suggested that what this shows is the ancient Mayan civilization working on their most recent invention, and that structure has something to do with space travel. Our ancestors were obsessed with space, and all over the world these ancient civilizations found ways to observe the cosmos. Why were they interested in space, and what do these carvings show us? In recent years, researchers have been able to find writings that prove that ancient man was interested in the stars. This discovery was made in 1961 in Romania. An engineer discovered a strange-looking manuscript. While looking through the ancient papers, something caught the researcher's attention. It turns out the papers were detailing concepts about rocketry, and this existed in a time when these types of things weren't meant to be around. The individual who worked in these designs was a man by the name of Comrade Haas, and he lived between 1509 and 1576. Interestingly, although he was able to design these incredible concepts of rocketry, not much is known about his life, but due to the findings by the engineer, it's caused scholars and researchers to become much more interested in this man. One of the first things the researchers noticed was that these drawings were very similar to that of the multi-stage rockets. This is complex rocketry, and is something that consists of 2 or more engines that are placed on top of this. This is normally used in rockets that need to reach high altitude. So the question here is, why was someone hundreds of years ago trying to create a multi-stage rocket? It turns out that Mr. Conrad Haas was a talented man. The manuscript that was discovered is over 450 pages, and hints at Conrad Haas being a master engineer and someone who was looked upon during this era. The manuscript also details artillery and rocket technology. Interestingly, the invention Haas was working on can be found in the manuscript. Conrad Haas was taken on by the military at an unknown time, and some have theorized this was because at the time he would have been one of the most impressive engineers around, having a good understanding of rocketry in a time when not many people would have understood what it was. It's incredible that someone during this time was even able to come up with the ideas of rockets, and researchers have even said that he's one of the first people to put into writing the concept of multi-stage rockets, further saying that his concepts were put to test and they did in fact work. Incredibly, his work doesn't stop there. He went on to design in detail spacecrafts, delta fins, bell nozzles and even liquid fuel. Being one of the first people to create complex things like this, it begs the question of where he was getting these ideas from. The paranormal is a subject that interests many people. Many of us are interested in the unknown, with some even having experienced it themselves. It's these experiences that's led some to investigate the subject, causing them to find a variety of answers for what happened to them. There are those that believe that we share the planet with paranormal entities, and every so often they make themselves known. Science, however, tells us that ghosts don't exist, and it's actually our brains playing tricks on us. They go on to detail that many things can happen to the brain that causes us to see ghosts, and some of these examples can be attributed to us being tired, our brain identifying objects in the dark, or our senses being heightened after watching a horror movie, and therefore we are more alert about what's going on around us. Paranormal researchers and those that have seen ghosts don't buy into this though, and say that the topic should be taken seriously and investigated. Other theories have been put forward to try and explain what we're seeing. For example, some note that humans' visual spectrum isn't great, and that we can only see a certain amount of things, while certain animals have a much wider spectrum. Snakes, for example, are able to see in infrared vision. Some suggest that ghosts are beings that exist in a spectrum not picked up by the human eye, and this is why sometimes motion detectors pick up on paranormal beings. Researchers have also said that a variety of different places can be haunted, with some of the most common places being that of graveyards, old buildings and houses where something bad has happened. However, one place you wouldn't expect to be haunted is that of ships and even the ocean. A man was working on an old boat when he took a mysterious photograph. Upon reviewing it, he discovered he'd accidentally captured something in the background. The image first started to make the rounds online back in August of 2014, with the eyewitness saying the following about the image. As I said in a previous post, I work at sea. Last month we came into a dry dock to carry out refit and repairs. Dry dock is when a ship is brought into a lock, the gates closed and all the water pumped out, leaving the ships high and dry on the blocks, thus allowing repairs and inspections on the underside of the hull. Next to us was an old military frigate being broken down for scrap. She had arrived around 2 weeks prior to us. Once the frigate was on the blocks and all dry, all the crew left the old girl to her fate. A sad sight, but that's how these things go. Once all the sensitive stuff had been removed, the dock workers were free to go on. The dock foreman John went on board first with a camera to take pictures of work areas. All in all, he took a couple hundred. This was one of them. He later sent all of the photographs to his boss, who, upon seeing this one, called John straight away, asking the following: "Who is the guy with the axe at the edge of the camera flash?" At the time, John was confused as he never saw anyone while on the ship. The area where this photograph was taken was in a cross alley deep inside the ship. He was walking around with a torch and a camera, and when he'd go to take a photograph, he would turn off the torch, leaving him in total darkness. After this, he would turn the torch back on and be on his way. Because of it being a military ship, the police were soon contacted. The police turned up and carried out their own investigation. However, they noted that they didn't find any trace of anyone being on the ship. It's also interesting to note that there was only one way on and off the ship, and this was by a gangway covered by CCTV. It was very unlikely that someone would jump off the side of the ship, as it was a 25-meter drop. You couldn't jump over without being seriously injured. No one was seen to leave the ship after John had taken this. If you zoom in on the image, you can make out what appears to be a person. The witness went on to say the following: "I am a skeptic. Maybe it's a trick of the flash reflecting off something, but if you really zoom in, you can make out the face, ear, collar of the jacket and the axe. And before anyone asks, I'm not going to name the ship or where she is, as I'm not sure if I'm even supposed to have a picture of the innards of a military ship. This gave me serious goosebumps. Needless to say, I didn't go back on board for a look." Some people gave their opinion on what they thought the being could be. This caused some to suggest that something dark took place in the region, and now that event has left an imprint that gets played over and over. Other examples of a residual haunting include that of something making banging noises, or turning on the same light over and over. Although this may sound creepy, residual haunting is actually one of the better hauntings to experience. According to paranormal researchers, these entities will let you know that they're there, but they'll usually stay out of your way. There's also a dark entity that's allegedly been plaguing the human race since recorded history, and this entity goes by many different names. For many years, a number of people all around the world have reported waking up at night and seeing a mysterious shadowy figure, and some suggested that the being in this photograph is a shadow figure. This shadowy figure has over time become famous, leading on to it to be given a variety of different names, some of which include the Shadow Man, the Hat Man, and the Shadow Person. The phenomenon has gained widespread popularity, and a number of documentaries have been made on the subject, trying to get to the bottom of what people are experiencing. However, it seems that the more the subject is looked into, the more questions are put forward. A dedicated blog known as the Hat Man Project has also been launched where people share their experiences with the Hat Man. The history of the Hat Man phenomenon goes way back in time, and different written records of the Hat Man have been found. In fact, some evidence of the Hat Man-like entity have been found in scriptures of previous civilizations as well, showcasing that whatever this thing is, it's been plaguing humanity for a long time. It's important that we research strange discoveries. It helps us to better understand the enormous reports found throughout the world, and what they could mean for the scientific world around us. According to author Richard J. Dewhurst, he had come across a number of strange reports made during the early 1800s, and up until the 1900s, that described North American archaeological discoveries of giant humanoid skeletons, and what was originally presumed to be a race of non-human creatures that seemed eerily similar to ancient descriptions of a race of giants. For some unknown reasons, the reports, data surrounding the reports, and discoveries taken in for research, such as skeletons, ancient artifacts, and references to the culture of giants, were either completely covered up, destroyed, or hidden from the public. One of the first reports made apparent to the author Richard Dewhurst were the overwhelming number of archaeological discoveries made by common people during the expansion of New York. The first report, titled A History of Livingston Country, New York, 1824, detailed the discovery of an indigenous people's burial mound that uncovered massive humanoid skeletons, and this was discovered by a man named Jesse Stanley. A portion of the report described the following statement. About the year 1820, the mound was removed, and in its removal arrowheads, a brass kettle and knives were thrown out. A number of skeletons were also disinterred. Among the bones was a human skeleton of enormous size, the jawbone of which was so large that Adam Hollasander placed it over his own chin and jaw. He was the largest man in the settlement, and his face was in proportion to the rest of his body." End quote. As convincing as it might be to assume that the institute reporting the 1820 discovery had made an error in the proportions of the skeletons, or the exact size of the jawbone, hundreds of additional reports would be made surrounding different mounds discovered in the region. In another New York report titled A History of Western New York 1804, that detailed the discovery of gigantic humanoid bones that were accurately measured and described by scientific sources, with the report quoted as providing the following statement. Human bones of gigantic proportion were discovered in such a state of preservation as to be accurately described and measured. The cavities of the skulls were large enough in their dimensions to receive the entire head of a man in modern times, and could be put on one's head with as much ease as a hat or a cap. The jawbones were significantly large, and the fit was outside of a modern man's face. The other bones so far discovered appear to be of equal proportions with the skull and jawbones, several of which have been preserved in the cabinets of antiquarians, where they still may be seen. End quote. Oddly enough, as mentioned in this report, the skeletons were preserved, sent to museums and studied by archaeological experts of the time, and yet not a single giant humanoid skeleton can be viewed today, or found in any major Native American museums whatsoever. How could there be so many discoveries surrounding giant Native American skeletons, and yet none of them are on display today to be studied or viewed? As Richard Dewhurst continues throughout his book, he points to one organization deceiving the narrative throughout his life. Richard Dewhurst writes the following quote. After the Civil War, the Smithsonian began to adopt a policy of excluding any evidence of direct foreign interference in the Americans prior to Columbus. Some have argued it was an attempt by the fractured post-war government to downplay any regional and ethnic conflicts in the still fragile national rebuilding after the war. Others have pointed to the expansionist policies incorporated in the Manifest Destiny, and the desire to obscure the origins of the tribes being displaced and annihilated by Western expansion. Still, others have alleged that it was a direct religious policy adapted to counter the growing problem with the Mormon religion, and its assertions that the lost tribes of Israel were found in America. End quote. Could this mean that the Smithsonian Institution in its entirety worked to cover up the possible origins of humanoid giants? Or was it a far simpler explanation used to prevent the destruction of commonly held theories at the time? Dewhurst goes on to explain it throughout his studies. The majority of the evidence surrounding the Smithsonian active policies of excluding any gathered archaeological discoveries that did not conform to their own narrative centers around one man. Major John Wesley Powell, a geologist of whom was directly responsible for many policies of exclusion of evidence. As it turns out, when the United States Congress first established the Bureau of Ethnology back in 1879, Major John Wesley was declared its first director, holding that position until his eventual passing away in 1902. The Bureau of Ethnology was created with the sole purpose of being responsible for the transferring of archives, records and materials relating to the Indians of North America from the Interior Department to the ownership of the Smithsonian Institution. It was during this time as director of the Bureau of Ethnology that Major John Wesley, seen as the lone expert of the geography of the American West, was asked to write up an extensive report surrounding the history of ancient tribes and their most likely origins. After finishing this report, rather than it be confirmed by other experts, archaeologists or explorers in their field, Major John quickly used his report as the official policy of the Smithsonian Institution, with little sway in its writings for the next 100 years. Additionally, John Wesley would write a report to the Secretary of the Smithsonian titled the following: on limitations to the use of some anthropological data, in which he actively asserted that there was no reason and no benefit to trying to discover the origins of North American native tribes. The report is directly quoted as saying the following: hints of customs may be discovered, but outside of this, the discoveries made have often been illegitimately used, especially with the purpose of connecting the tribes of North America with people of so-called races of antiquity in other portions of the world. In the study of these antiquities, there's been much unnecessary speculation in respect to the relaxation existing between the people to whose existence they attest, and the tribes of Indians inhabiting the country during this historic period. There is therefore no reason for us to search for an extra-liminal origin through lost tribes for the arts discovered in the mounds of North America." End quote. Unfortunately, following these reports, the later 20th century secretary of the Smithsonian between 1907 and 1927, a man by the name of Charles Walcott, would adopt the Powell Doctrine as the official stance of the Smithsonian Institute for the rest of the 20th century. In fact, even today the Powell Doctrine is considered to be the official stance held by the Smithsonian, despite the fact that many modern-day archaeologists and historians are attempting to speak out in support of evidence of a wide number of settling attempts made prior to the European settlements of the 18th century. The author of the find, Richard Dewhurst, attributed the policy to evidence of an overwhelming cover-up of not only discoveries of giant humanoid skeletons all across North America, but of any artifacts that could imply past European origin or expansion into the New World, kept hidden prior to the colonization efforts made by Christopher Columbus. Even today, the currently held theory as to the origin of Native Americans is centered around a purely theoretical argument of past ice ages, having formed ice bridges connecting all continents of the world together, and allowed for the travel for Africa all the way to the Southern Americas, despite the lack of any evidence for this claim. Richard Dewhurst provided the following statement in his studies surrounding the cover-up: "The great crime and tragedy of this policy is hard to compute. One glaring result has been the suppression of hundreds of out-of-context finds, all submitted to the museum in naive ignorance of the museum's official policy of suppression of alternative perspectives. To compound the problem, all major universities in the United States also adopt this policy, in conjunction with the official position of the Smithsonian, thus making it impossible to study alternative American history and receive any grants or funding for pursuits of this nature." End quote. Although it's impossible to find any of the recovered giant humanoid skeletons in the modern day, it has become apparent that an active cover-up has been taken by North American archaeological institutes, with a focus on disregarding any conflicting information or discoveries that put into question the validity of the Powell Doctrine, until private institutes make their own attempts to uncover the hidden Native American burial mounds that tend to hide giant humanoid skeletons all across the country. It appears that educational institutes will continue to cover up the truth for the foreseeable future. Another interesting discovery is the one made inside the Lovelock Caves. A group of archaeologists from the University of California discovered a number of strange objects inside the Lovelock Caves. Among the objects were mummies of red-haired giants. These mummies were said to be between 8 and 10 feet tall. As they were found in the Lovelock Cave, these giants were given the name of the Lovelock Giants. The archaeologists also discovered a pair of large sandals, far too large to fit an average human's feet. These sandals were 15 inches long, and they had signs showing that they were once worn by someone. Researchers also discovered a handprint on one of the stones in the Lovelock Cave. The imprint came from a massive hand. Many of the items found in the Lovelock Cave are held today in different museums and also private collections. In 1931, 2 large skeletons of red-haired giants were found buried close to Lovelock Cave. These amazing discoveries have led many people to believe that at one point in time, giant humans once walked our planet. Throughout history, various paranormal stories have been told, and it seems that the majority of these aren't one-off cases. Others have come forward in detailed encountering similar things. One of the most common yet frightening entities has been called the Shadow Person. For many years, a number of people all around the world have reported waking up at night and seeing a mysterious shadow figure in their room. This shadowy figure has over time become famous, leading on to it being given a variety of different names, some of which include the Shadow Man, the Hat Man, and the Shadow Person. The phenomenon has gained widespread popularity, and a number of documentaries have been made on the subject, trying to get to the bottom of what people are experiencing. However, it seems the more the subject is looked into, the more questions are put forward. The history of the Hat Man phenomenon goes way back in time, and different written records of the Hat Man have been found. In fact, some evidence of the Hat Man-like entity has been found in scriptures of previous civilizations, showcasing that whatever this thing is, it's been plaguing humanity for a long time. Some have gone on to detail that this entity would appear in the corner of a room, and that this usually happens while they're sleeping, and when they try to move or get away from it, they realise they can't. This has caused some to say this entity is evil. One woman has detailed her encounters with something mysterious. She shared her account with us, saying the following: "We originally captured a voice on video while my mum was talking with my 1-year-old son. The voice sounded like it said 'come on,' or something along those lines. Then we set up cameras and I called a priest. The priest came the same day when we set up the cameras. Within 24 hours we captured several smoke videos, 2 additional instances where we heard a clear voice, and it said, 'I'm tired of you trying to get me out of this house, and come see or come sleep,' and orbs that when slowed down formed the image of a man and a little girl. I called the priest back for a second blessing, and then we disconnected the cameras to avoid giving it any more attention or power. Before this started, my mum and I had been suffering from vivid nightmares and sleep paralysis, where I would see Shadow Man-shaped blobs, sleep hallucinations and voices calling you awake, and also feeling things. Lastly, my mother and I used to see the infamous Shadow Man in the hat when I was younger. This happened when I was around 5. I'm now 35. My mother and grandma saw it while awake. Since we disconnected the video, I'm still having sleep issues and even hallucinating, hearing things like growling, name-calling and loud buzzing noises. But I am seeing a sleep specialist, and attributing it to REM disorder to avoid attention just in case. We don't know why it started, but my mother, myself and my one daughter have always been sensitive, and seen things such as shadow people during sleep awakenings. Before this started, we had enormous negative energy in the household, and my sister tried to communicate with something that had a bad energy presence. That said, I've always been having horrible nightmares, and sleep paralysis more frequently since I moved in here around a year ago. The previous owner had a daughter that was connected to a murder, and we actually found a small witch broom in our attic a couple of weeks back, with her name on it, which we quickly threw away. The true cause of what happened is a mystery, and maybe a little bit of everything. As mentioned, this isn't the first person to come forward with their encounter. Others have detailed very similar things happening. especially when seeing the entity they call the shadow person. One thing that paranormal researchers can't seem to agree on though is what this entity is. Some people believe the Hat Man is actually a mysterious entity that's haunted human beings for years, and continues to do so in the present day. They believe that the Hat Man tries its best to paralyze a person, and even go as far as taking their life. However, when it fails to do so, the person lives to tell their tale. Interestingly, some tribes have described seeing a similar looking entity. One is that of the Canadian Inuit people, who refer to this entity as Yukumangernig. This mysterious entity is known to paralyze humans with fear, and it seems to suck the breath right out of them. While scientific studies have found a phenomenon known as sleep paralysis, they fail to explain the appearance of the shadow figure. According to one theory, humans are most vulnerable when they're asleep, and when they're suffering from sleep paralysis, their brain plays a trick where they believe that someone is ready to harm them. However, there's no scientific evidence supporting this theory. Some people believe that the Hat Man is actually their own spirit, and that it appears as a shadowy figure. They claim that when we're asleep, our spirit leaves our body, and sometimes when we suddenly wake up during the middle of the night, our spirit has not yet returned to the body, and what we're actually seeing as the Hat Man is our own spirit. Another person detailed their encounter, saying that they've had nightmares their whole life, and during many of these they've encountered the Hat Man, going on to say that this faceless being slowly makes its way towards them, and once it reaches the bed they then wake up, left scarred and confused about what happened. People like this who have encountered the Hat Man believe this is a real entity, and that its main goal is just to cause fear. There's certainly no shortage of shadow people stories, and there seems to be no consistency, with it affecting people from all over the world, and of all ages. Many of us find space interesting, and with things like movies, TV shows and live feeds, it's helped a generation of people fall in love with the wonders of our universe. Every year countless discoveries are made by space agencies, with NASA no longer being at the forefront of these discoveries. Other space agencies like SpaceX have stepped up their game, introducing us to new rockets, and even saying things like they plan to put millions of people on Mars within the next few decades. It's these announcements that have made people say that within the next few years, we're going to make big leaps in regards to space travel and discoveries. With more missions than ever being given the green light, people have taken time out to tune into these and wonder where the next one will take us. However, during these events, some people have made some interesting discoveries, even going as far as saying that when these missions are launched into space, they're not alone. A number of anomalies have been detected by the cameras, and this has caused many to slow down the footage in order to work out what these things are. One of the things that people say is when these strange crafts are seen out in space, they can't be ours. Agencies and researchers are quite open about the fact that space is one of the last unexplored frontier for humans, and this has caused amateur researchers to give their own opinions on what they think these objects are. One researcher said the following about this SpaceX video. For the last few days, this video has been making its way around Facebook, and it shows what looks like a large object flying close by. I've seen different comments, with some saying that it could be part of the man-made structure that came off during the mission, and that the camera managed to pick up on it, while others think that is an unidentified flying object. What's odd is that this object does seem to have a pyramid-like shape, and to me it seems big." End quote. As mentioned, the clip is currently making the rounds on social media, with people confused about what the object is. Some people who slowed down the video suggested that it's actually a triangle UFO, a commonly cited UFO that's been reported for many years. As suggested in the name, these objects are triangular in shape and have been reported for many years, with UFO researchers saying they're one of the most common UFOs. Interestingly, amateur researchers have said these shaped crafts are also reported in space. Another user said the following about the footage: "It's hard to deny that this is a trick of the camera. Whatever this object is, it definitely has the shape of a triangle, and it also looks like it has lights on it. I think this is some good evidence we have of an unidentified flying object in space." End quote. Going back a few weeks ago, Elon said the following on Twitter in regards to UFOs: "I have seen no evidence of an advanced civilization visiting Earth. Fuzzy pics that are worse than a 7-Eleven security cam frame grab don't count." End quote. Many people hit back at these comments, saying how close-minded and ignorant Elon is being, with one person saying the following: "The whole argument around why there aren't clear photographs of UFOs is a frustrating one. Take your iPhone camera for example and put it on maximum zoom and see what happens. It immediately goes fuzzy. Then try and take a photograph of something in the distance. Now imagine that object is moving in the sky. Now imagine you're in the car whilst this is happening. It's near impossible to get a clear photograph of anything under these circumstances." One of the things that many people don't seem to mention is that while camera quality in everyday phones has massively increased, they're only really good for up-close photographs. Anything that's over 5 meters away starts to get blurry. Also, the majority of people aren't expecting to see UFOs, so the whole encounter is rushed. People are normally doing everyday things and don't expect to see a UFO, so when it happens they just pull out their phone and try to take the best photo possible. It's not like people can walk around 24/7 with a tripod and a HD camera waiting for UFOs." End quote. As mentioned in previous videos, NASA's stance on these alleged objects is that they're just space debris, and don't show anything of interest. Scientists and researchers all agree that these objects don't need to be investigated, and go on to say that these are likely camera anomalies. Amateur researchers have hit back these claims though, and say that many of these strange objects are detected during live feeds, so before the footage has even gone through any processing stages. Officials stick to their replies though and state these are not of interest. What's strange though is that there seems to be a bit of a disagreement around unidentified flying objects. You have space agencies and people like Elon saying they don't exist, and then you have the Pentagon and other US officials saying these objects need to be investigated more, and even claiming that they've recovered off-world crafts. According to Eric Davis, the astrophysicist claims that the United States Department of Defense is in possession of recovered off-world crafts, and these are verifiably not made on our planet. His story, detailed in the New York Times, claims that Davis was tasked with giving classified briefings to Defense Department agencies, the Senate Armed Services Committee, and the Senate Intelligence Committee last October. During multiple instances of recovered materials from extraterrestrial events, Davis details that he was unable to determine the source of the materials that made up recovered artifacts, most likely being off-world metals and materials that could not have been terrestrial in nature. These massively different opinions have caused some to think that NASA are not letting us in on what they know, and with some UFO researchers even praising the government for being open about this topic. It seems that time will tell whether we're told more in regards to this subject. A former NASA engineer has made bold claims around Saturn. He goes on to say that giant crafts can be seen around this planet, and that the National Aeronautics and Space Administration are well aware of this. The former employee goes on to detail that unidentified flying objects are interested in Saturn's rings, and on numerous occasions we've captured them lurking close to the planet. Dr. Norman Bergeron, who's said to have been an employee at NASA's research center, details that these crafts that have been captured are not hard to spot, mainly because they're massive, easily being several miles in length. He said the following about the mysterious objects that were detected close to Saturn. Alien spacecrafts are proliferating in our solar system and around these ring planets. End quote. One of the ways he was able to find out about these crafts was because he had exclusive access to raw images. These are images that are sent back to NASA that haven't yet been edited or tampered with, something that is commonly done by the space agency and that they're open about. They claim that various images we see have been edited or are part of various images that have been put together, commonly known as composite images. These raw images, however, gave him an insight into what the public weren't able to see, and in various photographs he could see giant craft sitting close to Saturn and its rings. Knowing that these objects were being kept a secret, he decided that the general public should know about them, and so went about releasing a book. However, he soon revealed that he wasn't able to get it published in the United States. This caused him to travel to Scotland in the hopes of getting it published. He did, and the book was titled Ringmakers of Saturn. Many interesting photographs have been presented to back up his claims, but one of the most interesting ones shows what appears to be a giant cylindrical craft. He calls them electromagnetic vehicles. It was estimated that this giant object was over 2,000 miles long. Dr. Bergeron said the following about the mysterious objects. I don't know who built it, but what I found out is that these things inhabit Saturn. That's where I first discovered them, and they're proliferating. They are now in Uranus and Jupiter, wherever you see some rings. I call it the Ringmaker. I could be looking down on the rings and I could see parallel lines crossing all of the rings at once. That's about as long as you could go. I could tell that those lines marked the outside of the object. I say that it's an electromagnetic vehicle because I can identify streamline patterns, and I know that they were potential lines, and that says it was electrical. End quote. He claims that these giant crafts are building the rings on these planets, with theorists saying that these crafts can be found close to many celestial bodies in our solar system, including the Moon, Mars and the Sun. It appears though that amateur researchers can't agree on why these crafts are here. Some believe that they're monitoring the solar system, while others believe that they're actually other life forms that we share our solar system with. One of the issues though is the size of these crafts. The majority of them are hundreds if not thousands of miles in length. So what are these things? And if they are genuine, who's building them? One amateur researcher said the following. These giant crafts need to be investigated as they've been witnessed for years. I think that at this point we have enough proof to make a case that these are real. One of the problems is that we look at them and apply human ideas, thinking that humans can't build a craft of this size so it can't be done. But this is the wrong way of looking at it, and will actually set us back if we keep doing this. Just because humans couldn't do it, it doesn't mean it can't be done. After all, we are talking about the universe here. Human laws don't apply. I think more research needs to be done surrounding this topic, and the quicker we take it seriously, the quicker we'll get answers. End quote. Scientists and researchers though are not impressed with these kinds of images, with them saying that the most likely explanation is that these objects are just space debris, or anomalies picked up on their camera equipment. When talking about unidentified flying objects in space, one researcher went on to say the following. Most commonly, UFO claims are due to perfectly natural flaws or artifacts in our publicly available data. Some of the things that people are seeing are planets, cosmic rays, software glitches and debris. End quote. Another NASA official said the following about these claims. The majority of these alleged UFO sightings can be easily explained. One of the things that people see is space debris that's made its way in front of their cameras. When these pieces of debris are up close, it can look like an unidentified flying object. In reality, people are just seeing a common piece of space debris. Even with this explanation, UFO researchers have said this isn't what we're seeing, and in some cases these objects stick around for several hours. With one UFO researcher saying the following: "What I find strange is how these cylinder-shaped UFOs are seen on this planet. I think if it wasn't for that, then I would be more inclined to believe these are natural. But it's just strange how we see similar looking UFOs on our planet. Every year people report different shaped crafts, so I think that there could be more to this than what scientists are letting on." End quote. As mentioned, NASA officials have said that when space debris gets close up to the cameras, it can take the shape of a UFO, and many times this is what we're seeing. Officials say if it's not space debris, then the other explanation is that this is a camera anomaly, and these happen during the processing stage. But as some researchers have pointed out, some of these objects are seen on the raw file images before anything has happened. With space being so vast, is it really far-fetched to believe that we share it with other life forms? As of right now, NASA has said they've never recorded a UFO, and that every alleged UFO can be easily explained as space debris. This week, 2 celebrities have come forward and detailed the UFO encounters. The first one was Demi Lovato, who said that while being out in the desert, she used meditation to contact UFOs, even having proof as she took photographs of the craft. Many people came out and said it was good how such a high-profile celebrity was talking about UFOs. It now seems that Miley Cyrus has done the same thing. During an interview with US Weekly, Miley said she was once followed by an unidentified flying object. She said the following during the interview: "I was driving through San Bernardino with my friend, and I got chased down by some sort of UFO. I'm pretty sure about what I saw. The best way to describe it is a flying snowplow. It had this big plow in front of it and it was glowing yellow. I did see it flying and my friend saw it too." End quote. Perhaps the most interesting part of the interview is when she said she made eye contact with the occupants, going on to say the following: "A being was sitting in front of the object. It looked at me and we made eye contact, and I think that's what really shook me. Looking into the eyes of something I couldn't quite wrap my head around. I was shaken for like 5 days. It really messed me up. I couldn't really look at the sky the same. I thought they might come back." End quote. Miley isn't the first person to have experienced something like this, and for years many people have come forward with similar kinds of encounters. Hynek scale is used to explain different types of interactions with UFOs. For example, a close encounter of the first kind is described as seeing an unidentified flying object less than 500 feet away. In this case, the individual is able to give a detailed description of the craft they saw, helping investigators to build a case around the encounter. This is what Miley's encounter would come under, and something that is surprisingly not uncommon. Every year across the United States alone, there are more than 8,000 annual reports of unidentified flying objects sighted all across the country, with several thousand more sightings made across the world, and countless more that have gone unreported out of fear of ridicule. Oddly enough, since the 1950s, this annual number of UFO witness reports continues to grow every year, either pointing to evidence of a growing number of extraterrestrial visitations, or the cultural shift that allows more and more individuals to come forward and report their strange sightings, without fear of being ridiculed by the public. A recurring theme surrounding that of extraterrestrial abduction stories is that many alien abductees are unaware of being victims of an abduction, until therapeutic hypnosis allows them to unlock repressed memories seemingly locked away from their conscious minds. This also appears to be the case with the witness account of Judy Doherty. According to Judy's case, back in 1973, 4 witnesses were travelling home to Texas City when they encountered a strange light that was described as hovering above them in the night sky. The 4 witnesses, Judy Doherty, her daughter Cindy, Judy's mother and Judy's sister-in-law, all exited the car to get a better look at the strange hovering craft. Despite nothing happening, the group of people claimed that it felt as if a long period of time had passed, despite having no recollection of the time, and shortly after this unexplained time confusion, the lights began to hover away and then disappeared into the distance. Immediately following the event, Judy and several members of the group began complaining of severe migraine headaches, generalized anxiety and trouble sleeping following the encounter. After visiting a handful of doctors, all of whom believed the symptoms were most likely physical manifestations of stress, Judy visited Dr. Leo Sprinkle, a well-known ufologist and trained hypnotist to activate her stress. Once under hypnosis, Judy began to uncover repressed memories of an alien abduction encounter that took place during the sighting that the 4 witnesses only made several weeks prior. According to Judy, and later corroborated by her daughter after she'd also undergone hypnosis therapy, the 4 women were taken on the craft and witnessed 2 alien entities performing a series of surgeries and experiments. The event began as Judy claimed that while under hypnosis, she felt the impossible feeling of being in 2 places at once, as if holding conflicting memories of her standing outside the car and being taken up into the ship, as if the memories of her standing beside the car were implanted over her real memories of the abduction. She would also provide the additional statements surrounding their abduction and ascent into the craft. "It's like a spotlight shining down on the back of my car, and it's like it has this substance to it. I can see an animal being taken up into this. I can see it squirming and trying to get free, and it's like it's being sucked up." End quote. The first experiment they witnessed was that of small entities cutting apart a cow and removing its organs for study. Throughout the experiment, the woman claimed that they would feel the thoughts and emotions of the small alien entities and could feel how robotic and inhuman they were. Judy herself claimed the alien creatures possessed no form of empathy and were merely curious creatures with no concept of emotional bias, not even showing emotion when it came to the pain screams of the bovine creature during its examination, causing her own fear to grow that the alien creatures were capable of far more sinister actions without a consequence. Following the cow examination, Judy claimed to have seen her daughter being placed on an operating table as the aliens began taking a variety of samples. However, Judy nor the daughter go into details about what they mean by this or what they witnessed, with her only statement being the following: "They don't listen, they just ignore me, and go about their work as if it's nothing. They don't seem to have emotions. They don't seem to care. They just took some samples from her." End quote. Once the hypnosis therapy was finished, Judy's symptoms cleared up almost immediately, and she remarked that normalcy resumed back into her life, as her anxiety was nearly completely alleviated. Although skeptics have continued to deny her claims, all witnesses confirm each other's stories, and leave behind a grave warning that visiting alien life is far more sinister, not because of some sadistic pleasure, but because they're far less human than anyone could imagine, and will do whatever they want to satisfy their own curiosity, even if such actions lead to the harm of those around them. The Dewey Lake Monster. The Dewey Lake Monster is reported to be a humanoid bipedal creature, standing at an approximate height of 9 feet tall, covered from head to toe in thick hair. Witness sightings differ in some regard in the texture and colour, given that many different lighting conditions in which witness encountered the creature. In some cases the creature's hair is red, and matches closely with brownish bark, and appears to have a texture that matches the trunk of a tree, with many witnesses mistaking the creature to have been a standing tree. Some claim that the creature has no visible face, or has a visible black face with reflective eyes, and sharp teeth that become visible only when the mouth opens. Witnesses consistently report the smell of a strong odour, or skunk-like stench that accompanies the creature. The Dewey Lake monster has made several non-human sounds, such as a deeper yelling tone, impossible for a human to replicate, barking noises, ear-splitting honking sounds, and piercing screams that have caused ear damage, and could be heard over tremendous distances. Some of the encounters have been compared to the sound of a wild goose, or a large dog, whereas other encounters claim the sound to have been impossible to describe or identify. The creature has demonstrated multiple forms of adapted locomotion. One such ability is the proficiency to swim and dive with expert quality, with the creature able of staying underwater for tremendously longer periods of time than is possible for humans, or any other known creatures. It's also been reported to be able to run on all four limbs at speed that tops 30 miles per hour, and has demonstrated violent tendencies against cars and individuals. The Berry Patch Sultan Hill sighting. On the 1st of June back in 1962, 4 young boys were playing around Suntan Hill, located near Dewey Lake Street in Michigan. The boys Jimmy Andre, Jeff Hall, Gary Lee and Al Johnson were familiar with playing by themselves in wooded areas, and had made a game of their adventures called Playing Army. While near Suntan Hill, the children would run around pretending to fight each other with large sticks, and engage in pretend battles for several hours. Estimated to have been sometime around 4:23 p.m, the children decided to take a break and eat their pre-packed lunch that consisted of packed sandwiches, which had been left in Gary Lee's Boy Scout backpack located at the bottom of the hill. The children began to race down the hill, with the 4 of them splitting off into 2 groups of 2, with Gary Lee and Al Johnson forming the first group, and Jimmy Andrew and Jeff Hall forming the second group. Taking 2 separate paths, Gary Lee and Al Johnson would reach the bottom of the hill first, and would spend a considerable amount of time waiting for Jimmy Andrew and Jeff Hall to arrive. After around 10 to 15 minutes, the second group of boys would arrive suffering from an intense form of hysteria, which was brought on by fear, with Jimmy's pants having been completely soaked through with urine from a terrifying encounter. According to the 2 boys, they took a separate longer path down the bottom of Suntan Hill that passed through a patch of wild raspberries. While they were passing through the patch, they began racing each other in a small competition to see who could eat the most wild raspberries, pushing and pulling at each other and snatching the raspberries out of each other's hands. Suddenly Jimmy had frozen place while staring off into the distance, and appeared to have a scared or grimacing look on his face as he was frozen. Jeff turned and stared at Jimmy for a while, believing that his friend was playing a strange prank, or trying to scare him, and tried to figure out what he was doing. Without turning to see what Jimmy had been looking at, Jeff began making mocking faces at Jimmy, mimicking the scared, wild-eyed emotions of the boy, before running up to him and pushing him until he fell over. Jeff would later recount that before Jimmy had frozen in shock, a large gust of wind appeared to have blown in, causing weeds to fly around. Once Jimmy was on the ground, the wind continued to grow in force, flying Jeff's hat off his head and landing a distance away in the nearby grass. As Jeff ran to chase his hat, he noticed what Jimmy had been staring at and fell to the ground in fear. According to Jeff, the object was a bipedal creature of immense height. The creature was covered from head to toe in red hair and looked like a giant tree. Terrified of the creature, Jeff claimed that he began to bark like a dog to scare away the creature, unsure if it was a large unknown animal that would have been frightened by sharp noises. Realizing that the creature was not reacting to his barking, Jeff and Jimmy got up and started to run away from the creature. Once they were an estimated 20 yards away, they turned back around and watched the creature from afar. As they stared at the creature, the monster let out a deafening roar that sounded like the deep-throated scream of a wild man. The kids then ran and met up with Gary Lee and Al Johnson. Testimony later provided by Jimmy's uncle would claim that the event had split the boys up in angry fury, with the children never going out again or hanging out with each other. The uncle would provide the following statement. They started accusing each other of making stuff up or being a coward, but even years later Jimmy swore he saw this giant bear with an alligator belly and long legs. End quote. Skeptic explanation believes the children encountered a large black bear, a species of large animals native to West Virginia. The children would deny the claims that the animal was a bear, and would remark that the creature stood on its two legs and was covered in reddish or light brown fur. Another interesting account is that of the moving shadow Huckleberry Lane sighting. Almost 2 months later, on the 20th of July back in 1962, 3 men, Kirk Stover, Vinnie Armstrong and Willis Wright, were attacked by an unknown humanoid bipedal creature of a massive size. According to Kirk Stover, he'd recently bought a new mobile trailer for camping and was eager to show it to his 2 friends, Vinnie Armstrong and Willis Wright. He told his friends to meet him by Huckleberry Lane, on the south side of the Dewey Lake, and this was for a party at his new mobile trailer. While Kirk Stover was waiting for his friends, he began to notice that the trailer was being pushed and pulled by a great force that rocked the trailer back and forth. Quickly, Kirk Stover ran out of the trailer, believing that his friends were trying to play a prank by rocking the trailer back and forth. As he came storming out of the trailer, ready to yell at his friends and warn them that they were going to knock the trailer over, Stover claimed he was attacked by a massive creature. According to Kirk Stover, he was originally unable to see the creature due to having been attacked from behind. When he was attacked, he was immediately thrown to the ground and started to scream, thinking he was being attacked by a bear. Before he could turn around, the creature began to drag him a great distance by the legs towards the lake, and Kirk became terrified, believing that the animal would soon submerge him underwater. As he fought with the creature and struggled, he made several attempts to get away and prevent himself from being dragged towards the water. After struggling for a period of time, suddenly the creature let him go and stopped the attack. It was at this point that Kirk Stover got to his feet and ran as fast away as he could from the creature. When he turned around, he could finally see what had been attacking him. Stover would later provide the following statement. I thought I was being attacked by a bear, but when I tried to run I saw it. It was standing like a man. It wasn't a bear. I don't know what that thing was. End quote. As soon as Stover had got a distance away from the creature, he hid in the nearby bushes and trees, waiting for the creature to leave before he would make his escape. He then began to realize that the creature had not suddenly become disinterested in the attack because he had been struggling, but that something else had drawn its attention away. At around this time, Vinnie Armstrong and Willis Wright would arrive at the mobile trailer and would spend some time calling out looking for Kirk, as they noticed that he was nowhere to be seen. Checking around the trailer, they were puzzled to find no sign of their friend, who left the trailer unlocked and the door completely open. Believing that he was playing a prank, the 2 men entered the trailer and started to drink all of the beer that they found inside, cracking open a few cans, but not yet enough alcohol to have been impaired. As they were waiting for Stover, they grew increasingly suspicious that something bad had happened to their friend. After more than 10 minutes had passed and they had not yet seen their friend. It was at that moment estimated to have been sometime around 8 PM, that the two men heard the sounds of leaves crunching and twigs snapping outside the trailer and called out to Kirk, believing that he'd finally arrived. Suddenly, the two men felt the violent shaking of the trailer rock back and forth, which caused them to fall to the ground, spilling their beers. Vinny would provide the following statement. "I thought we were going to tip over. I was thinking we're going to go into the water." The two men would make their way out of the trailer by crawling on the rocking ground and sliding out the door. As soon as they were out of the trailer, they saw Kirk Stover running towards them from a distance away. Kirk realized that the monster suddenly ignored him to go after his two friends, who had arrived at the trailer. He'd not known that his friends had arrived, but it was clear that the monster had somehow become aware of this moment and decided to go back to the trailer. Once the monster was out of the sight of Kirk Stover, he got up from his hiding place and began to run back to the trailer, running into Vinnie Armstrong and Willis Wright, who appeared to have been suffering a terrible fright. Willis Wright and Vinnie Armstrong had believed that they were being attacked by a large bear, and at the sight of witnessing Kirk Stover running up towards them, soon realized that something far more strange was taking place. As the men were telling each other what they'd experienced, the three turned to see what they described as a large shadow passing by the light forming from the lake, the light most likely having been a reflection of the light caused by the moon, which was in its waning gibbous phase at the time. Willis later said the following: "It was huge. I mean big. All three of us saw it. We jumped. It went back down to the lake, then splashed and disappeared." Once the creature entered the waters, the men notified the local law enforcement about their encounter, who would later dismiss the event after finding several cans of spilled alcohol throughout the trailer. The Magician Lake sighting. 26 days later, on the 15th of August back in 1962, two witnesses, Roger Long and Helen Borges, would encounter a humanoid bipedal giant while visiting the Magician Lake, one of the sister lakes of Dewey Lake, during the early morning. According to the couple, they'd been riding around in a motorboat all throughout the Magician Lake, resting occasionally around a small cluster of islands seen in the lake. Although it was too early to see into the water clearly, the couple would notice a very large hairy animal swimming around in the lake, near to their motorboat, and would occasionally watch it submerge for a period of time and splash around. The couple remarked that they believed the animal to have been a deer, and so they watched it for some time, enjoying the novelty of the sighting. Once the light became more clear, however, they began to realize that the creature was definitely not a deer, and was some unknown large hairy animal. Curious as to what the creature could have been, the couple continued watching until it reached the nearby shore. Once on the shore, the animal stood up on its two legs and turned to the couple. Roger Long said the following: "It walked out of the water straight up on the shore. It was around twice the size of a full-grown man. It looked back at us and then disappeared into the woods." End quote. The couple then saw the creature do a shuddering motion, causing all the water to come off its hairy body, as the creature slowly made its way into the nearby forest. Robert Long would immediately report the sighting to the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. The Roy Townsend sighting. 9 days later, on the 24th of August back in 1962, the police received several phone calls reporting a large explosion that had been heard coming from Priest Street of Michigan. Investigating the cause of the explosion, police located a flip car that had been completely scorched. Shortly after the flames had been put out, the police received a call from Mildred Whittingmore, a local resident. The two teenagers came out to her house for help after suffering from a terrible accident. Once the police arrived, the two teenagers were hesitant to tell the officers what had transpired, with one of the teenagers, Roy Townsend, claiming that they'd been parked up when another car hit them. After some coaxing from the officers, The two teenagers, Roy Townsend and Jane Arnett, provided the full story. While the teenagers were sitting alone in the car together, the car had suddenly been lifted and flipped on its hood. Roy Townsend claimed to have seen a humanoid bipedal giant man smashing the car. Jan Arnett would claim that Roy Townsend would immediately flee the scene, leaving her behind. Jan would then crawl her way out of the car while screaming in terror, and would meet up with Townsend later on the side of the highway a distance away from the accident. After a period of wandering, the two teenagers would find a nearby home and ask for assistance. The local law enforcement initially proved to be skeptical. Investigators from one of the multi-jurisdictional officers, Officer Gerald Jones, however, believed the teenagers, after analysing the tire marks from the wreckage. According to Officer Jones, skid marks were visible on the road that continued over the hill and down the road, which proved that the car had been in parked position and was pushed at a constantly slow rate of speed. Towards the end of the skid marks, the pivot point where the car had been flipped was clearly defined on the road, which provided evidence that the car had been lifted in an upward direction from a stationary position. If the car had been flipped due to losing control of the car at a high rate of speed, the skid marks would have ended at the peak of the hill, and not have been following the road at the descent down with an ending pivot mark. Roy Townsend and Jan did not suffer any physical injuries, but would break up shortly after the incident and suffer from temporary hysteria. The Michigan swamp sighting. A little over a month later, on the 30th of September 1962, 4 friends who were visiting from Chicago and unaware of the monster sightings in the region visited the Twin Lakes, one of the sister lakes of Dewey Lakes, to see the opening of a musical fountain. Roughly 15 minutes away from the Twin Lakes, while travelling on the Dewey Lake Road, the 4 witnesses Terry Jones, Randy Aomas, Beth Hormel, and Patty Pasternak were stopped in the middle of the road late at night, sometime around 9 p.m, as it appeared to them that a tree had been growing in the middle of the street. Unsure of what it was they were looking at, the tree suddenly turned around and faced the 4 friends, who got a clear look at the creature. The women in the car screamed so loud that the driver panicked and began to drive towards the creature. The bipedal humanoid giant then began to walk away towards the nearby swamp and entered the water casually, disappearing on the north side of Dewey Lake Street. The Jamie Shore encounter. 5 children on a late Sunday night would witness one of the most terrifying encounters of the Dewey Lake monster, and this was on the 30th of December 1962. According to the witnesses, Jamie Shore, Mark Miller, Dale Howe, Janny Keene and Katie Keene, they were all playing around Dewey Lake Street, looking for a rare lunar moth species native to the region. Throughout their hunt, Jamie Shore became interested in several lights in the sky that could be seen across the street, and this was towards the nearby swamp. Believing they were fireflies, Jamie Shore told the other children that he was going to go firefly hunting instead. Although the other children would tell Jamie that there were no lights in the sky, and that fireflies weren't around during that time of year, Jamie would continue closer to the swamp, disregarding their advice. At around 9 p.m, Katie Keene's mother would call for the children to come home, and noticed that Jamie Shore had yet to return. When she asked the children where he was, the other kids told her that he'd gone to chase fireflies. Originally, the group did not panic, believing instead that Jamie Shore was just slightly out of earshot of them, and so began searching for him. It was shortly after 9 p.m. that panic began to arise, and it became obvious that Jamie Shore was missing. Dale Howe's mother and Jamie Shore's mother would quickly be alerted about the missing child, and the neighbourhood came together to search for the missing boy before alerting local law enforcement, spending roughly 30 minutes searching for Jamie Shore. The neighbours were prepared to alert law enforcement, when a local resident, Harry Woods, found Jamie Shaw curled up in a weeded area located beside the swamp, badly bruised and injured all over. Jamie Shaw would immediately be treated for his injuries and would return to school 3 days later, telling everyone that he had been attacked by a huge hairy man who hit him to the ground and threw him towards the swamp. Lying in the wooded area, Jamie hid from the monster and stayed there until help would arrive. Jamie's teacher, Miss Shale, would remark that she believed Jamie's testimony after having questioned him privately for telling lies to other kids and seeing the bruises on his body and having him recount in eerie detail everything that had happened. The Betty Garcon sighting. On the 31st of October 1962, Betty Garcon would take a train ride from Detroit, Michigan to Chicago that would travel through the Michigan area. Around 10 p.m, the train made a slow stop near the Dewey Lake Street to investigate claims of severe debris on the tracks. While the train was stationary for around 15 minutes, Betty noticed what she described as a faceless tree, or a giant stump that stood in the distance, approaching the train from the woods. Betty would claim that for the first few minutes, she was unsure of what she was looking at, as the mass appeared to have been standing motionless for several minutes, confusing her as to if it was a creature or a fallen tree. Suddenly the figure began moving from the tree line towards the rear of the train. At this point, Betty would motion to 2 other passengers, Emily Clark from Chicago and Roger Wentworth from St. Louis, to confirm her sighting. All 3 would claim to be witness to the event and confirm Betty's sighting. The passengers on the train would then hear a loud metal impact against the train before it was then moving again, with the train porter claiming that the sound was caused by a cold start on the rural tracks. Once arriving at their destination, the rear end of the train would see a considerable dent in the side of the end car. The witness would report their sighting, providing testimony that the creature was a hairy bipedal humanoid creature that stood 10 feet tall and was estimated to have weighed 700 to 1,000 pounds. The Chicago police artists would draw their sighting, creating the Garcon train sighting sketch, of which would show one of the first designs of a Sasquatch-like creature. The camp sighting. On the 20th of June 1963, students from the Dowajack school system would get to enjoy the end of the year activity, in which all of the students would journey to Finch Camp for outdoor education. Finch Camp was used as a way for students to study Michigan geography, learn outdoor skills and appreciate the natural beauty of their state. Many of the camp classes included activities like archery, track and racing and traditional survival studies. 2 of the students, Denise McCormick and Jenny Fisher, while participating in the outdoor archery class, had misfired an arrow and went to retrieve it by venturing further out into the wilderness. While looking for their arrow, the 2 students claimed to have seen a huge stinky hairy man and said it was staring at them, which caused them to run back to the camp in terror. When the 2 students returned, they told their friends about the encounter, and soon all of the students were made aware of the story. Later that night, the cabin in which the 2 students were staying in, alongside several other students, was attacked by a creature that began slamming itself against one of the cabins. The girls were all screaming, and one of the students ended up flying out of her bed from the force of the strikes and the shaking of the cabin. That next morning, the group of students discovered that the foundation of the cabin had been cracked, as if a tremendous force had been attempted to lift the cabin from the ground. Additionally, 2 large inhuman footprints were pressed into the mud right where the students had believed the monster was attacking the cabin. Qi, the vital life source that exists inside of every living being. The word comes from traditional Chinese, meaning air in the sense of life force and energy flow. For centuries, it's been used in Chinese martial arts and healing practices, The act of balancing qi is referred to as qigong. Those who believe in this mystic force say it's the energy which flows through and within us. The qi must remain balanced in order to bring good health and a stable mind. The notion itself in scientific terms is a pseudoscience, unproven as there's no way to directly observe it, and yet despite this it's an ancient practice that remains strongly practiced and followed, even to this day, with many believers and healers who follow these classical teachings and beliefs. So today we'll be taking a look at the concept of qi, and about the fabled extraordinary individual Zhong Chang, otherwise known as Dynamo Jack. Zhong Chang is a qi master and acupuncturist who rose to fame in the 1980s. The healer, who is from Indonesia, was part of an Indonesian travel documentary by Lorne and Lawrence Blair. The documentary Ring of Fire East of Krakatoa was broadcast on public television and depicted Zhong Chang's practices. He was referred to as Dynamo Jack due to his desire to keep his identity a secret. In the Mungus of Java, a book written about Chang's life, we learn that he was forbidden from accepting any payment for his healing work by his mentor. In other words, he was prohibited from gaining a profit by using his sacred abilities. For 20 years, Chang worked as a driver to earn money for himself and his family, including his 7 children. This was just enough to keep him financially afloat. The family was in trouble with poverty for many years, and misfortunes before them often during the months prior to the documentary. Chang claims to have summoned the spirit of his old mentor, who told him his financial concerns would soon ease. The spirit had been right, for financial opportunities soon arrived. The Blair brothers found him in Java and asked him if he would like to be in their documentary. Initially he refused. He stated, "I'm only a healer." Lawrence Blair stated in an interview, "We followed him around Java on his healing rounds and asked if we could film him, but he always declined, saying his powers resulted from a type of meditation with an ancient tradition of secrecy. Only when my brother Lorne was suffering from a serious eye infection that he finally allowed us to film him in 1987. End quote. Lorne's healing session with Dynamo Jack was recorded and included in the documentary. Lorne laid still as Dynamo Jack placed acupuncture needles into his arms. The action caused them to move sporadically, qi allegedly flowing through them. After the experience, Lorne stated, "It wasn't like any acupuncture I've had. I was getting very powerful electric shocks and couldn't control my movements." End quote. Chang then explained the process of what he was doing. He was transferring his positive yang and removing Lorne's negative yin, and linking them together, which created physical electricity. He explained, inside our bodies both flow in equal amounts. These energies are opposites, they can never meet. Yin and yang normally run parallel to each other, never letting go of one another. I use my yin and yang together as one. This is why I can do what I do. By itself, yang qi cannot pass the limits of the body. According to the brothers, Chang had the powers of primacy. He took a newspaper outside with the intention of showcasing this. He held out his hand over the paper, concentrating as he did this, and smoke began to form from the paper, bursting into flames. Chang had made a sacred oath not to reveal the secrecy of his powers to anyone other than pure-hearted students, with the desire to learn and heal. When the documentary was published and broadcast, Chang despised the sudden popularity it gave him. Immediately the contact he had with the brothers was cut. Lawrence said the following in an interview. When he heard we'd shown this footage in the public, he was very upset and refused all our future efforts to contact him. As the years passed, we sadly resigned ourselves to never seeing him again. My brother Lorne never did get the opportunity to meet him again as he passed away." End quote. When Lawrence met with Chang for the second time, he explained that he'd spent 2 years performing deep meditation in Borneo Chang said that during this time, he had the epiphany that the old knowledge was fading from the common consciousness. He decided to do another documentary to remind humanity of the power that dwells inside us, docile and waiting for us to awaken it. He seems able to control the amplitude of this power like a dimmer switch, and it causes uncontrollable responses in the patients. Chang believes that mastering Yin Qi is what will allow people to enter the spirit world. The purpose of Qi in the traditional sense is mixed with the ancient beliefs of otherworldly and the spiritual. Because of the spiritual aspect of Qi, Chang and alternative Eastern practices in general have been placed under scientific scrutiny. Suggestions of Chang using electric shocks with a secret device have been spread throughout the years, but there's no idea why Chang would do this to every single patient he sees, as he would gain no profit from it. Furthermore, even an electronic device would not be able to set off such wild muscle movements so suddenly. This happened in the limbs of the patients after inserting the needles. In acupuncture, the body is said to absorb electrical energy, or said energy is dispelled. The charge is seemingly mild at most, not to mention that an electrical current and metal needles would mean the acupuncturist would likely be electrocuted by the device. Opinions vary, but many believe in the power of John Chang and Qi. Many Eastern practices are foreign to Westerners. People fear the unknown, especially those who cling on to logical science above spiritualism. In the second documentary, a team of American scientists were invited to investigate the practice, and could not find any proof of trickery or misconduct with Chang's work. In fact, there was no way in which they could disprove the concept of Qi, nor prove it, however. The idea of Qi originates all the way back to the 5th century BCE in China. The Western viewer may associate the concept of Qi with the now abandoned ancient concept of the four humas, or the ancient Hindu yogic belief. The Chinese philosopher by the name of Mencius, who lived in the 4th century BCE, described Qi as the life force in all living beings, nature, heavens and oceans, connected together by an invisible force that exists within all of us. Qi was commonly associated with the human body and its health. When the flow of Qi was stable, your body was functioning and healthy. If it was unbalanced, it would cause sickness and disease. As such, the importance of Qi grew over time, and it was vital for people to keep their Qi flowing. The people believed that special exercises and metaphysical treatments could bring longevity and stability to one's life. The concept of Qi has been a crucial part of Chinese and Asians' histories, philosophies and beliefs. This means, however, there are various descriptions of what Qi is. As time passed, thinkers created various kinds of Qi. According to them, the heaviest fractions produce solid objects and matter. Light divisions of Qi form liquids. Like the oceans, and ethereal Qi created life breath that exists as energy within living beings. These beliefs remained popular during the 20th century, and even now they're still followed. Descendants following the paths laid out by their ancestors. Acupuncture is still a highly praised type of alternative medicine, especially in the East. In the end, we can only speculate on Zhong Chang, or Dynamo Jack and his abilities. Are they real? Do we all truly possess an unstoppable force within us? Could we unlock unlimited potential with enough determination, practice and understanding of the life force inside us? Did Zhong Chang really possess psychic abilities and powers, telekinesis and more? Can we too learn to control such unthinkable powers if we only try hard enough? Or perhaps are some people born to be sacred healers and philosophers, whilst others are not? We are left with 1,000 questions which beg for answers, but some things are forever fated to be mystery. Unfortunately for us, the concept of Qi is not one that's easy to prove or determine. It cannot be quite disproved. Therefore, we'll have to decide what we believe for ourselves. Some people doubt the metaphysical, others believe in it wholeheartedly, and some stay on the fence between the two views, uncertain of where the truth lies. But what is certain is that this enigma is intriguing and worth speculating on. A fairy is a mythical creature that's usually depicted as being small, having a humanoid body, small wings, and in some reports is even able to glow. The Eastern Virginia Medical School carried out a study in the 1970s, in which they asked everyday Americans about their belief in the supernatural. The study showed that over 2/3 of them had an experience that they couldn't explain. There's many people that believe in certain regions of our planet, small fairy-like creatures can be found, and that at first they can be tough to make out due to how fast they fly. However, those who are able to get decent photographs do show what appears to be tiny fairy-like creatures. This person shared these interesting photographs to their Facebook page. At first glance, they appear to look like the typical fairy we all think of. They said the following about the photographs. My friend from Agartha visited me. Some of you will say it's just a moth, but it's not. I always meet them every night. End quote. With another person saying the following. You must have a very special relationship. They don't like people or cameras from what I understand. End quote. This person said this. These photographs are interesting and I think they do show a fairy. If you look at a photograph of a moth and then compare it to this, it's completely different. Moths don't have thin bodies and legs like that. I think that people need to be more open-minded about these creatures. I think it's quite obvious that there's something going on. My friends have seen creatures that look similar to this, and it's true that when they're around you they do look like moths. But upon closer inspection you can see these are tiny fairy-like creatures. However, not everyone is convinced by these types of discoveries. Skeptics have pointed out these are just everyday creatures, with one person saying the following. I see these in my garden all the time, and they're not fairies but rather midges. End quote. For those unaware, midges are small flying insects that have a maximum wingspan of 2 to 4 millimeters. There's over 35 different species of these creatures in the UK alone, with wildlife researchers noting that they live in practically every land area outside of dry deserts. There's people though that state this isn't what they're seeing in their photographs, and that believe fairy-like creatures do live in certain regions on our planet. It seems that there's no shortage of mysterious creatures living among us. The Irish have their leprechauns and the Scandinavians have their trolls. Latin America has El Duende. Standing less than 2 feet tall, El Duende is said to cause mischief wherever they are seen. They are described as being covered in hair, including long bushy beards for the men. Some also described a wide brim hat. In Latin American folklore, these mysterious creatures can hail from the forest or live inside the walls of your home. They are mostly seen by children, as they tend to be mischievous and childlike themselves. They are also blamed for quite a bit of strange doings around one's home. You're missing keys or that important paper that went missing. This has caused some to say that these creatures are playing tricks on you. In most stories they seem fairly harmless. Some even suggest offering up your first bite to any meal to them, as to keep them on your good side. They are said to lend a helping hand around the house. Other locals have reported that if you get lost in the woods, you can call out to these creatures and they will help you. This seemed to remain true as long as you weren't causing harm. When boys go out to play in the woods, they are warned of the Watcher of the Woods. Little boys were told not to make too much mischief in the woods, and not to cause harm to any of the animals. El Duende was always watching you, and if he spotted you doing wrong, he would appear to you and take you to his cave, which many stories state is deep inside the woods. The only way to escape was to fool him into thinking you was one of his kind. El Duende only has 4 fingers. If you could hide your thumb and convince him so, he would let you go. Another tale tells of the sleeping El Duende. Settling in for a nap, the creature would rest against a tree, slowly disguising themselves as the clay around them. Children would find small clay statues of little gnomes throughout the woods, and would sometimes take them home. During the night, they would sneak off back into the woods. When the children awoke and found the figure missing, they knew for sure that they'd plucked one of the small gnomes. Interestingly, although these sound like childish tales, many have come forward with alleged proof of these creatures' existence. There have been many sightings, pictures and videos that point to this creature being genuine. Many people, whether they believe in many folktales or not, believe in the El Duende's existence. Some put them in the same category as Bigfoot or Chupacabra. Others believe it just to be a cautionary tale to boys heading into the woods. Whether it's a tale to keep children out of trouble, or simply a tale meant to elicit fear, urban legends will continue to be told as long as stories exist. It may be because they're just fun. Some believe, however, it gives us a very keen insight into our deepest fears as humans. Perhaps it's that keeps us coming back for more. Others suggest that the majority of these stories are based on real events, and that over time they've just been retold. As mentioned earlier, there's no shortage of mysterious creature encounters, and every year people come forward with their stories, detailing impossible to explain creatures. Perhaps the study of cryptids needs to be taken more seriously. After all, people from all around the world have reported encountering creatures not recognized by science, with some even being able to provide photographic evidence. Maybe it won't be long before scientists make a breakthrough in some of these cases. As many know, it's no secret that there's various locations on our planet that remain unexplored. So maybe some of these cryptids could be hiding away in these isolated places. Only time will tell whether these creatures live among us, or just in our imagination. The United States government is well known for conducting a wide variety of strange research experiments. Many of these are described as being on the cutting edge of scientific advancement. This has led to incredible breakthroughs in medicine, computer technology, agriculture, and a wide variety of additional fields used across the military. Oddly enough, however, there seems to be a recently declassified government experiment that was approved for release back in 2003, surrounding the training of psychic soldiers, and enhancements to the brain known as the Gateway Process Experience Experiments. The declassified document titled Analysis and Assessment of Gateway Process seems to be a written memo between a US Army researcher at the CIA and sent to a US Army operational commander located out of Fort Meade. The study of the memo seems to have been the analysis surrounding the legitimacy of the Gateway Process study, as the researcher writes the following in an opening statement. You asked me to provide an assessment of the Gateway experience in terms of its mechanics and ultimate practicality. Most likely the US government was unaware of what the Gateway process really entailed, and so sent an independent researcher to the examination areas to undergo the process, and learn if there was any legitimacy to this study in the first place for continued funding. Within the first paragraph of the document, however, the researcher makes a special note to include that the Gateway process was a technique designed by Isaac Bentov, stating the following. Based on conversations with a physician who took the Gateway training with me, I had recourse to the biomedical models developed by Isaac Bentov to obtain information concerning the physical aspects of the process. For those that are not aware, Isaac Bentov was a leading Israeli researcher, known for his incredible contributions in the creation of patents for the steerable heart catheter, ECG electrodes, pacemaker leads, and a number of other patents that would help to form the Boston Scientific Meditech Corporation. Isaac Bentov was also known for his contributions to the Israeli Defense Force, being one of the lead inventors on the Israeli missile project, as well as many other improvised weapons. However, what many are not aware of surrounding the Israeli inventor was his devout belief in following the mystical side of consciousness, which would lead to his primary contributions to the Gateway process experiment. John Abel Bentoff's fellow business partner was once quoted as saying that Bentoff said the following: "Bentoff was interested in how the brain worked and actually attached electrodes to his head, which were connected to a function generator in which he could change the wave shape and their power, and learned about how the brain interprets these different frequencies," hinting at the plausibility of Bentoff's connection with the gateway process experiment. The document then goes into the breakdown of what the gateway process holds, with the first explanation from the researcher being in regards to the human body's natural frequencies of the brain, and the frequency following response. According to the study, a form of enlightenment can be triggered in a person's mind when both hemispheres of the brain begin operating at the same frequency, allowing them to communicate without any form of distraction and leading to a heightened state of focus. Although it requires a number of different techniques to reach this state, the main contributing factor in the study was a device that relied on the human body's natural frequency following response. In the document, the researcher details the following statement: "To achieve synchronization of brain hemispheres, the hemisync technique takes advantage of a phenomenon known as the frequency following response, or the FFR, which means that if a subject hears a sound produced at a frequency which emulates one of those associated with the operation of the human brain, the brain will try to mimic the same frequency pattern by adjusting its brainwave output. Therefore, if the subject is in a fully awake state, but hears sound frequencies which approximates brainwave outputs to the theta level, the subject's brain will endeavour to alter its brainwave pattern from the normal beta to the theta level." Additional techniques for reaching a syncing of the hemispheres include assisted hypothesis from a psychologist, as well as techniques that match transcendental meditation practices, with a note stating that gurus who have practiced transcendental meditation practices for 20 years have the ability to reach a hemisphere sync for up to 15 minutes at a time, without any form of assisted technology. According to the document, this training lasts around 7 days before a person is capable of reaching a hemisphere sync frequency with the assistance of technology, and is capable of furthering the study with tasks related to skill in a gateway process experience techniques. The first task that is given to the trained subject is that of problem solving. When under the influence of synced hemispheres, a subject can call upon its higher self for assistance in solving problems, with the higher self representing a form of unfiltered subconsciousness that can remember everything ever taught to the subject, and use it for perfect creativity and logical deduction. The document details that this ability can be used to solve personal difficulties, technical problems in the realm of physics, mathematics, science, practical administrative problems, and so on, in a way turning the brain into an instantly responding and calculating computer that can analyze and process information at a much faster rate than normal. The second task that is given to a trained subject is referred to as an energy bar tool. The subject is then required to visualize and focus different forms of energy throughout its body, being fed by the universe to allow the body to undergo rapid healing processes. This could mean that with the increased focus on the mind, the brain can suddenly consciousness force autonomous physical processes, such as healing and heart rate with ease. The third, and usually described as the final task for most of the subjects, is referred to by the researchers of the gateway process experience as remote viewing, although it's not similar to traditional remote viewing noted by psychics to see distant locations using astral projection. Instead, the technique requires the subject to visualize and access parts of their memory, and begin to holographically portray the memory in such a way as to allow the person to relive memories with perfect total recall. The researcher writing the document then notes that this is typically where training and ability of most of the subjects end, and that less than 5% of the participants are able to move past these skills into the realm of impossible to understand psychic abilities. The document then details the following: the ability known as Focus 21 the Future, the last and most advanced of all focus states associated with the Gateway Training Program, involves movement outside of the boundaries of time-space as in Focus 15, but with attention to discovering the future rather than the past. The individual who has achieved this state has reached a truly advanced level. The research document then goes on to state that the ability to travel into the future is accomplished only after the subject is able to master an out-of-body experience. This occurs when the natural brain frequency of the hemispheres is synced, and then reach a matching frequency with the background electromagnetic phenomenon of the universe, allowing consciousness to imprint itself and begin to leave its body and journey out into the rest of the world, picking up electromagnetic information similar to how a radio captures radio waves, and how our eyes capture photons to imprint an image of our surrounding environment. Once this information begins to pour into the consciousness of a person, they can then begin the process of astral projection that will allow them to speed up time and look into the future, as well as deep within the past at moments that their memory would not be able to access. Unfortunately, the document does not go into any form of evidence surrounding the legitimacy of the claims of an out-of-body experience of the ability to see into the past or future with verifiable tests. Regardless of this lack of information, the formal conclusion of the document states the following: there is a sound, rational basis in terms of physical science parameters for considering the gateway process experience to be plausible in terms of its essential objectives of heightened brain activity. Additionally, the document seems to hold several pages involving a new scientific theory as to the formation of the universe, and that is actually a massive three-dimensional toroid, helping to explain why certain parts of the universe seem to be moving at faster speeds compared to others, as evidence of this donut shape moving the massive galaxies back down and around to the other side of the universe. The document then ends with the researcher stating that the gateway process experience should be provided to all members of the organization for heightened mental ability, and goes on to suggest a 12-step plan as to how to provide the gateway training to all members of the organization. Although the document fails to elaborate on the finding, the memo then states the training could open up members of the gateway process to be attacked by intelligent energy beings if the boundaries of time and space are being surpassed, stating the following: subjects must be intellectually prepared to react to possible encounters with intelligent, non-corporeal energy forms when time-space boundaries are exceeded, with additional statements that perhaps practical use of the gateway process experience could be used to gather information from such entities and the universal consciousness. With the advancement of technology, millions of us are now able to tune into live streams to watch the launches of space missions. There's never been a better time to access space footage from home. However, this footage often causes controversy in UFO circles, with hundreds of images and clips hitting the web and becoming the subjects of viral debates. There are people that spend hundreds of hours carefully analysing footage, looking for anything that may seem unusual. One place where alleged UFOs have been seen is that of Mars. Ever since humans managed to send rovers to Mars, there have been people who have claimed to have seen Martian objects on the planet's surface. Famous authors and scientists have long speculated about possible Martian life on the planet, so it was inevitable that humans would become fascinated with signs of life once we reached its surface. UFO hunters online have spent hundreds of hours scanning through thousands of live streams and NASA photographs in the hopes of finding something strange. This has in turn caused other researchers to try their luck in finding anomalies in these photographs, and it seems that there's no shortage of strange images. One photograph that was sent to me several years ago was this one, with the individual saying that it looks like a large object can be seen hovering above the Martian surface. Not much information could be gathered about the photograph, with them saying that they sent it to me because they thought it was a UFO. Others have seen similar looking objects on the Martian surface, with one UFO researcher saying the following: seeing unidentified flying objects on the Martian surface is not uncommon, and if you're patient and have time to look through the massive NASA library, you will likely discover one yourself. I've seen many objects hovering above Mars, some of which are similar to orbs while others look like large triangular crafts. I believe that something is happening on Mars that we're not being told about, End quote. Another place where UFOs have been reported is that of the International Space Station. UFOs have been seen countless times on live streams and photographs, but there are some which have caused more of a stir online. A NASA livestream from the International Space Station seems to have caught 3 orbs which appear to pass close to the ISS. UFO enthusiasts were left debating what the objects were online, as not 1 but 3 objects came into view on the NASA live feed. Some thought that these objects could have been surveilling human space missions, while others tried to pass them off as a lens flare or other more common occurrences. While UFO enthusiasts were quick to acknowledge the mysterious smoke objects, NASA claims these interferences with live streams are simply lens distortion and not some type of alien craft. While some UFO researchers have said that these unknown crafts could be of alien origin, scientists have said this is not the case, and we shouldn't always jump to conclusions. In 2016, another random object was caught on camera and appeared to fly by the ISS. A diamond-shaped object could be initially seen, but as the footage went on, the object appeared to be changing its shape, and the NASA live feed was randomly cut at the same time. Viewers looking at a blue screen in this instantly caused wild speculation online as to why NASA cut the live feed. NASA later claimed they had not cut the live feed intentionally, and stated they had in fact lost transmission. The timing of the lost transmission seemed all too coincidental to viewers, and many were left believing a cover-up was the real reason for the live feed cut. In April 2017, another mysterious object caught the attention of UFO hunters, and this was again on a live stream. A cylinder-type object entered the view of the camera, and was quickly spotted by UFO enthusiasts. Other mysterious footage seen on the ISS livestream went viral, when viewers claimed to have seen a mysterious object heading directly towards the ISS, before quickly disappearing from view. Despite some saying it was an unidentified flying object, others suggested it was nothing more than space junk. Ivan Wagner, a Russian astronaut on the International Space Station, claimed to have caught a UFO on camera. Wagner tweeted the following: "Space guess or how I filmed the new time-lapse?" The video, which lasts for 1 minute, shows the auroras passing near Antarctica and Australia. Wagner also said this: "However, in the video you will see something else, not only the aurora." End quote. The incredible footage shows the curved edge of the Earth at night, with the green lights of the auroras moving across its surface, with several objects visible in the background. Between 9 and 12 seconds there are objects which appear to be flying in a formation. Though the video is a time-lapse, so even though in the tweet they appear quickly, the actual footage of the objects flying would be around 52 seconds in real time. The International Space Station is a UFO hotspot when it comes to these sightings. Are alien life forms trying to understand and follow our space endeavours, or do you think these are just space debris being picked up by the space station cameras? Another common place where unidentified flying objects have been reported is that of our moon. In 2016, hundreds of UFOs were reported to have been seen taken off from the surface of the moon. However, experts have claimed this is just a natural phenomenon, which is seen anytime you look at the edge of the moon's surface. Experts claim that what's being seen is nothing more than an optical illusion, caused by digital glitches known as artifacts. Though many UFO sightings are reported, NASA live feeds are often among the most prominent places for UFO researchers to find sightings of mysterious objects. There are many more UFO hunters who don't take to observing the skies at night, but rather observe space from their computers, looking through hundreds of photos and watching live feeds. They say this is one of the best ways to see these strange objects, and that it allows you to compare them to photographs taken a matter of seconds before. Still, UFO researchers and scientists still disagree on what they're seeing, with scientists saying these are nothing more than natural phenomena, while UFO researchers think these UFOs belong to something much more advanced than us. Mars is a planet that's of high interest. For years, NASA have been carrying out various experiments on the red planet, with other space agencies such as SpaceX saying they're also interested in Mars, even going as far as saying that within the next 10 years they want to put humans on the Martian soil. According to NASA, Mars is a planet that doesn't really have much going on, saying that the climate is harsh and there's no forms of life. Interestingly though, various people have managed to capture some interesting photos of the Martian surface, with amateur researchers saying there's more going on there than what we're being told. One idea that's put forward is that Mars is actually full of precious metals, with gold being one of the main ones. NASA have even said that gold likely exists on Mars in trace amounts. Mars has the largest volcano in the solar system, Olympus Mons, and it's been theorized that gold could be near the surface of Mars as this volcano is still relatively young. Going back a few years ago, amateur researchers posted images online allegedly showing what looks like small gold nuggets. One idea that was put forward was that the rock could be from a meteorite impact, and this isn't a far-fetched idea either, with scientists saying that over 200 meteorites hit the planet every year. The photographs were taken on the 26th of November, and NASA scientists said they'll now try to locate the objects so they can take more detailed photographs. These recent images are the ones that's currently making the rounds, allegedly showing what looks like large gold deposits on the Martian surface. Various people on Facebook groups gave their opinion on what they could be, with one user saying the following: "I think there's more to Mars than what they're letting on, and these discoveries prove it. I think there are large gold deposits that run through the surface of the planet. Maybe that's why space agencies are gearing up to go there. We know there's water deposits there, so who knows what else is there." End quote. It seems we'll have to wait for future missions to see if there's as much gold as people make out, or if it's just shiny rocks as some researchers suggest. Although this may be the case, astronomers have said that space is littered with many interesting objects, one of which is that of the billionaire banking asteroid, more commonly known as 16 Psyche. An asteroid hitting Earth normally isn't a good thing. However, in March 1892, scientists discovered an incredible asteroid that's unlike any other that's out in our vast universe. 16 Psyche, as it was named, is not a rocky or icy body, but rather made up of valuable metals that are currently found in Earth's core. Some of these metals are used in everyday industry, and some are a little more special. One of these metals is gold. In theory, we have a massive space bank sitting thousands of miles above us, somewhere between Mars and Jupiter. 16 Psyche measures around 140 miles in diameter, and makes up around 1% of the mass of the main asteroid belt. It's thought to be a stripped core of another planet, allowing scientists to gain a deeper understanding of what our planet's core is like. It's one of the biggest asteroids in the solar system, meaning if it did hit Earth, it would take a lot of people before anybody got their hands on any gold. However, if in theory scientists could harness the asteroid and bring it back to Earth, then the wealth that could be obtained would be unimaginable. As far as scientists currently know, this value stands at around $700 quadrillion. The thing is that making everybody billionaires would basically keep everybody at the same level of wealth they were before. The world economy is only worth around $59 trillion, so if 700 quadrillion was injected into it, the entire world economy would crash and would essentially render money worthless. For example, loaves of bread and pints of milk would begin to be priced at millions of pounds, and holidays at billions. In other words, there would be a massive inflation. Gold will no longer be worth as much, and this process is already underway as companies start to look at mining asteroids closer to Earth. Whilst we're on the business side of things, companies may begin to monopolize the mining of these asteroids, which would keep gold prices high and out of the hands of the average person. This sort of thing has happened before with valuable minerals and metals. In the 1800s South Africa, the De Beers company effectively monopolized the diamond industry, inventing the cliche "a diamond is forever." Now NASA is hoping to send a craft to visit the asteroid in 2022, arriving in 2026. It offers NASA the chance to research further about what our own planet is composed of, and to delve deeper into the history of how terrestrial planets came to exist. However, it seems highly unlikely that any of the gold in the chest will be in yours or my hands anytime soon, something we can only dream of. It does show us though an example of what could be out there in the endless expanse of space. This incredible object was found within our solar system, something that is monumentally small when compared to the universe. It's one of the reasons that people have an open mind about things when it comes to our universe. Due to it being so vast, the possibilities are endless. As mentioned, companies like NASA and SpaceX are gearing up to send humans back into space, with missions being planned for the Moon and Mars. SpaceX has announced their plans to send over 1 million people to Mars by 2050. And not only this, but they plan to build an actual city for these people in the hopes that a new civilization can be started. Elon Musk stated in various tweets that the end goal is to get 1 million people on Mars, and he hopes to do this within the next few decades. He also said that he hopes that 1,000 starships can help him achieve this. He goes on to say that the goal is to be able to launch several of these starships a day, so that trips to Mars can be open all the time. Over the years, NASA have conducted various experiments, many of which have been carried out in space. One of the things that NASA boasts is a massive library of photographs, and although some of these don't include anything interesting, there's some that stand out more than others. NASA's Space Shuttle Columbia mission STS-58 was a spaceflight mission carried out to help aid in life science research. NASA said the following about the mission on their website. Countdown proceeded smoothly to liftoff, delayed only by a few seconds because of an aircraft in the launch zone. 14 experiments conducted in 4 areas: physiology, cardiovascular, musculoskeletal and neuroscience. 8 of the experiments focused on crew, 6 on 48 rodents. Crew collected more than 650 different samples from themselves from rodents, increasing stat space for life science research. Combined data from SLS-1 and SLS-2 will help build a comprehensive picture of how humans and animals adapt to weightlessness." End quote. However, during this mission they also took various photographs of our planet. Interestingly, some of these contain anomalies that cause some to ask questions. It's no secret that supposed UFOs have been captured in NASA photographs. In fact, even astronauts themselves have come forward and said they think they've captured UFOs. Although NASA have said there's no proof in these sightings, and that they've never captured a UFO in any of their photographs, other people think this isn't the case. However, NASA have said that everything mysterious can be explained as space debris. Regardless, there's those that believe this isn't the case, and in some older NASA photographs mysterious anomalies can be seen. One old photograph from the STS-58 mission is this one, which appears to show an unidentified flying object. The object in question is black and looks to have 2 wings. It can be seen hovering above the planet, and not far from the STS. What's odd is that many of these strange objects have been witnessed around these older NASA missions, causing some to speculate about what they could possibly be. There's one group of people that believe these are unidentified flying objects, and that they approach our crafts in order to see what we're doing. This idea isn't supported by mainstream scientists, but amateur researchers say this subject needs to be taken more seriously, and that there's thousands of NASA photographs like this that show mysterious objects getting very close to our missions. Of course, when it comes to objects like this, there's always the possibility that it could be space junk, even though, as some have pointed out, many of these objects do appear to look like ships, and not just random pieces of space junk. As mentioned, astronauts have come forward over the years and reported seeing mysterious objects, some of which have flew past them while in space. They've also gone on to detail mysterious glowing objects, large objects that appear to look like ships, and even objects that appear to travel thousands of miles per hour, beating anything that we have on Earth. Interestingly, when images like this get shared, it reminds some of the Black Knight satellite, a strange satellite that's said to have been placed above our planet in order to spy on the human race. Scientists have said there's around 3,000 human-made satellites in orbit around the Earth. After the Soviet Union launched the very first artificial satellite into orbit in 1957, various countries around the world have sought to compete, and satellites today are used for communication, navigation, and exploration. One mysterious satellite that's been capturing people's attention for many years is that of the Black Knight satellite. Those who've studied it have said the satellite must be one of the oldest ones orbiting our planet, and that it wasn't placed there by humans. This idea then suggests that the satellite is much older than many human civilizations, causing some to speculate that it could be thousands of years old. This has caused theorists to say that this ancient object is transmitting signals to somewhere in space. This mysterious satellite has been featured in the media since the late 1950s, and it's become one of the most talked about objects in space, with some thinking that this satellite is a spy satellite. One of the first people to allegedly pick up on the object was that of Nikola Tesla, a Serbian-American inventor who would change the world we live in. Those who have been looking for signs of extraterrestrial life have said that this satellite is one of the best pieces of evidence we have so far. It's important to note that researchers and scientists have said the Black Knight satellite is not real, and that what people are seeing is just pieces of space junk. The space above our planet is littered with old satellites and materials, with some researchers saying that space debris that's high in altitude will stay in orbit the longest, with low orbit objects dropping back to Earth within several years. Upon first seeing images like these, people have suggested it could be the Black Knight satellite. One person said the following: "I find the idea of the Black Knight satellite interesting, and firstly it's not a piece of space debris. The famous photographs are the well-known ones, but this satellite has been picked up on for decades, way before the supposed 1998 thermal blanket. Photographs from the 1970s and 80s show a mysterious-looking satellite above our planet, so the thermal blanket theory doesn't hold up, even though I'm sure it does explain some of the sightings. What I find interesting about this satellite though is who placed it there. Why was it placed here? Why is it still being captured in photographs today? Are we actually being monitored? It does sound out there, but the photographs speak for themselves." End quote. As mentioned though, NASA have said these photographs are nothing more than space debris, and that they've never picked up on an ancient satellite above our planet. Space truly is one of the last unexplored frontiers, and it's likely that within the next few decades we'll start venturing into space. The idea of this is exciting, but even scientists have said it's unlikely we'll make it out of our solar system. Space is so vast, and every year researchers make incredible discoveries, all of which help us to understand how monumentally massive the universe is. So although there's no chance of us venturing too far, perhaps that doesn't matter as we're already being visited. It seems that time will tell whether these objects are the real deal, or are just being misidentified. Technology is always improving. Scientists and researchers are experimenting with technology more than ever. What this means is that we are making breakthroughs in different departments, and one of these is that of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence makes it possible for machines to learn from experience. This means that repetitive actions will be picked up much quicker. This is why researchers have come forward and said that certain jobs will be lost to artificial intelligence, especially those that require repetitive movements. Various experiments have been announced over the years, with some questioning whether we should be playing around with things like AI. For example, it was announced not too long ago that Facebook was using chatbots. The reason this made the news was because the AI chatbots did something unexpected. Although the bots were given specific scripts to use, they seemingly began communicating with one another in their own language. Humans were unable to understand communication between the chatbots, or grasp how it was developed with no human input. This information is kinda scary but yet impressive, as it speaks to where we stand with artificial intelligence, and what it's capable of. Again though, this caused some to question whether we're out of our depths when it comes to AI, and whether we should be experimenting with it. In 2018, Harvard scientists hooked a monkey's brain up to a neural network. At first, people questioned why they'd want to do this, but the researchers said they did it to try and simulate individual neurons. The neurons in question are responsible for recognizing different patterns and faces, and the scientists attempted to activate those particular neurons by showing the monkeys images created by this deep learning artificial intelligence. One of the monkeys they tried this on was Ringo, and the Harvard scientists said that different photographs were shown to the monkeys, and these were created by an artificial intelligence algorithm called Xstream. Before people get worried though, Ringo wasn't tied up or in any pain when this experiment was taking place. In fact, the scientists said he was very comfortable throughout the whole thing, and actually sat in the Harvard lab sipping an orange juice. While the monkey was happy enjoying his juice, the researchers flickered images in front of his eyes. The AI system quickly learned to generate images which would trigger individual brain cells. Incredibly, this was done without activating any of their neighbours. The AI system did do this until it got a response from the neurons, and what's incredible though is that the artificial intelligence was able to trigger the neurons in the monkey's brain to create images that resembled faces. The whole idea behind this was to see if this technology could allow us to ask the neurons what they wanted to see. This is uncharted territory and further tests will need to be carried out. Interestingly, this isn't the only test that's linking artificial intelligence and brains. Elon Musk has detailed more about his Neuralink. It's his recent vision that involves AI brain chips. The company was first set up back in 2018, and as stated on their website, they plan on developing ultra-high bandwidth brain-machine interfaces to connect humans and computers. Elon has even gone as far as saying that this technology could even treat brain injury and trauma. While on the Joe Rogan podcast, he went into more detail about the company and what they plan on doing. Elon said the following: "There's still a lot of work to do, but I think we're looking at within a year. I think we have a chance of putting input in one end, having them be healthy and restoring some functionality that they've lost." This isn't science fiction either. The company has brought on various high-profile neuroscientists from top universities. By mid-2019, the company has over $158 million in backing. Some have found it interesting that Elon has gone down this path. After all, he's been very vocal about the dangers of AI, and even suggested that in time artificial intelligence could take over. He warned people about superintelligence, a form of artificial intelligence that's way smarter than us humans. He stated that this AI could create an immortal dictator. His worry is that the development of superintelligence could end up in the form of AI that governs the whole world. Elon said the following: "There are many outcomes, but one of the least scary ones is if we had a company or small group of people that manages this superintelligence. This type of technology could take over the world." He went on to say the following: "At least when there's an evil dictator, that human is going to pass away, but for an AI there would be no death. It would live forever, and then you have an immortal dictator from which we can never escape." That sounds worrying, and rightly so. Elon isn't trying to scare people, but is trying to make them understand what implications artificial intelligence could have on the world. Currently, we use AI for everything, and he says it won't be long before it's controlling us completely. Early AI work has allowed us to be where we are today, and it seems that we're not slowing down. Elon has also stated that he thinks the human race will be overtaken by artificial intelligence by 2030 or 2040. That doesn't seem too bad, but in reality it only gives us 10 years. This study has said that machines could outperform humans in all tasks within 45 years. The stats were gathered from a survey of more than 350 artificial intelligence researchers. However, the study says that within 7 years computers will be better at translating languages, and by 2026 they could be writing our school essays. Another worry is the manipulation of information. Algorithms could be used to affect certain information. Because AI is good at repeating, it could report negative news on certain businesses or individuals. The future of artificial intelligence is uncertain, but researchers have said that people should get used to the idea of robots and AI, and it seems they will be very much a part of our future. Every year researchers and scientists are making breakthroughs that hopefully will allow humans and machines to live side by side. There are those that have warned us about testing with AI though, and that it easily has the capabilities to outsmart humans, demonstrated when the two AIs created its own language to get past humans. It's examples like this that have made some people worried, but researchers have said that as of right now, the majority of testing is under control. Only time will tell whether we made the right decision to continue experimenting. So what do you make of artificial intelligence and the fact that it's become a part of our everyday life? Also, would you guys have one of these implantable brain-machine interfaces? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comment section below, and help us by growing this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.